Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also, but the debate is shabby. Yes, no one with any kind of, let's see, the qualified people are too chicken to make any kind of argument. So all there is from the KE Truther clan are the most wretched of the refuse in terms of their scientific credentials, which are zero. And so their arguments are pretty insipid and silly. And yet, okay, people are going to claim they're worthy of attention, because that's all they have. Because they can't produce any credible scientific argument. They can't produce anything from NASA, for example, or from any credible institution that does sophisticated and complex experiments. They can only do these people, doing these crude, sloppy, dirty experiments. So anyway, this is the subject that isn't discussed by physics at all that I could find, where they actually analyze elastic collisions and understand these differences between these different objects in interacting. So there's a concept of storage. That is, some elastic object absorbs an energy, and you could theoretically collect it. All right, you could collect its compression, an example. And then there's elastic, that is, hard surface against hard surface, where there can't be any storage. That is, you can't hold the object once it pushes on the surface and hold it and somehow get anything back. You can't store it. It'll just be converted directly into heat. And so you could argue that a hardened surface is like a very, very, very stiff spring. That is, it just doesn't, it doesn't store anything. Yet it's springy in the sense that it will provide for a reflection because the surface itself is reflective. So anyway, there's no analysis anywhere. That's the simple truth. And it's just an absolute fact that springs are inefficient in the sense that they do get hot and they do this phenomenon. That is, after the elastic, once you've stored the energy, releasing it is problematic because the spring itself moves. All right, and that movement is still energy it didn't give away. It's energy that's still left in the spring. And okay, so a tennis ball, as this example is estimated, right? There's no science, to be around 25%. So you bounce it, you drop it from a height, it only comes back 75% of that height. That's the argument. Okay, and yeah, I think most people have seen this in their real life. That if you bounce something it diminishes quite dramatically. Frankly, it doesn't bounce a very long time. It only bounces a few times, and hardened steel will bounce 250 times. So a huge difference in the efficiency of the elastic interaction. And again, no discussion by physics about this phenomenon. And this is sort of important in the sense that they do lots of experiments where they put springs in the experiment. So I could argue that air track experiments, obviously they're metal objects, they could make it metal against metal elastic. Two aluminum balls is not very inefficient in terms of its elasticity. Okay, not as good as glass or steel, but you could put a piece of silicate on the end and have the two pieces of hard surface hit each other, and it would be even more efficient. But they don't do the experiments that way for some reason. Okay, these very low velocity air track experiments, somehow they're afraid to allow them to be metal against metal. And the simple argument is that when Professor Lewin did metal against metal in the sense of Velcro against Velcro and it didn't stick, the results of the experiment were entirely different. So it is a significant factor in what they are using as an excuse. So the simple truth is that you can do, I've already drawn this in a previous example, where you can actually test it to some extent, certainly, by bouncing something, seeing how many times it bounces, and that'll tell you how efficiently it's storing and releasing the energy. But they haven't done there hasn't been any effort to really find out exactly how much. But you can see it in the experiments, in the sense they have done air track experiments, 2 heavy carts hitting each other, and then 2 light carts hitting each other. And the total momentum, the numbers are just, it might be 40% difference in the total momentum. That somehow, the spring is giving away a whole different amount of total momentum depending on the weight of the object placed in front of it. And so it's a rather dramatic proof, okay, that it's a problem with springs. And obviously the spring doesn't produce different amounts of momentum. It doesn't store different amounts. So the fact that they're using that to defend kinetic energy theory, in the sense that they're saying, look, the heavy objects have the same kinetic energy. Well, they have the same kinetic energy because the light objects lost a tremendous amount of the energy. So that's the only reason why they have the same energy. So it's a clear proof of this phenomenon being significant in these experiments. I mean, obviously, if when you're testing the octane of your gasoline, or the power of your explosive, or the force of your spring changes based on what kind of mass you put in front of it, that's an indication that something's wrong with your experiment. The very fact they can't even figure that out just demonstrates how this is undercooked physics. So they're just going to keep lying that somehow they've proven something. They haven't proven anything. The first, they haven't even touched this discussion until I brought it up. So they're not going to link to any real physicist talking about this subject. No real engineer, no real experimentalist, no credible scientist of any kind doing anything on this subject. No Veritasium video about springs. No Steve Mould video about springs. There's no video. There's no explanation for how this does happen. No experiment indicating the consequences of it. Steve Mould has a video where he's showing the ball oscillating insanely. Does he talk about, well, that's a bunch of wasted energy. That's energy we didn't get back in the ball. It's not in linear motion. That's like the wheels turning on a car. It's a conversion of the linear motion into rotational, stored energy. It's flywheel energy. Wheels are flywheels. Whether they like to be or not, that's what they turn into. All right, so let us begin. You are correct. Every elastic object does not give back 100% of the energy when something goes into it and then rebounds back. And it's somehow not a scientific subject. So it's probably been known that that's true, that things don't bounce back as well as they should for hundreds of years. And yet nobody's analyzed it at all. Nothing. Zero. Done tons of spring experiments, but they don't care that, well, yeah, there was this huge efficiency problem. Okay, and the amount given back depends on the velocity of the rebound. Yes, so the faster it's going, the more wobble it's going to be doing, more oscillating, and that means the more energy that didn't get into the object as linear motion. So yes, there is loss or waste, as you call it. Okay, and I would argue it's significant. Like the example of the tennis ball, 75% only returned, 25% lost. Unfortunately for you, people have addressed this. No, they haven't. And call them people is just really, really, you think you can get away with calling these people people? Oh, come on. Yeah, silly. So these are Falwell arguments. I mean, they're just irrational nonsense arguments. So this will be easy to debunk these 2 links that he's provided. So I'll do that later. Which is to point out that the experiment that uses springs, the efficiency is nowhere. The efficiency is meticulously small, minusculely small. Okay, all right. Which is to point out that that in the experiments that use springs, the efficiency is nowhere. No, this isn't a sentence. The efficiency is nowhere is minusculely small, and thus nowhere here near as large as you make it out to be. Okay, so there's no evidence of that whatsoever. And again, I could go to the physicist Michael experiments done with his low friction carts, where he got about a 40% difference between a 1-mass and a 3-mass. So 3-mass carts being pushed and 1-mass carts being pushed, the total momentum had a difference of like 40%. Unlike a tennis ball, springs have much greater efficiency. Well, says you. Up to 90% efficient in terms of speed. So, okay, the argument would be, can you show that somewhere? Like a mechanism where if something's bouncing on a spring and it keeps bouncing quite well, 100 times, 50 times even. The argument is no, you can't show that because they run out of energy so quickly. So 10 bounces would be an average of 10%, right? So if it lost all its energy in 10 bounces, you could argue that it lost 10% on each bounce, as an average, a rough average. So can you show something bouncing more than 10 times on a spring? Anyway, see this video testing it. So there's not going to be any test here. Okay, so no worries. All right. Anyway, so I'll do, like I said, I'll do the 2 links later. All right. The idea that springs, I've already done these years ago, debunked this crap, this turd talk from this moron. Anyway, the idea that springs can't give back what they put in because they are supposedly outrun the object. The object outruns them. So the spring doesn't outrun the object. It's exactly the opposite. The object at some point gains a maximum velocity that's a little tiny bit higher than the spring because the spring is running out of energy. So at one point the spring's going 50 and then it goes 48. But the object's still going 50. So now the spring can't touch the object anymore. The object has left at 50 and the spring will go 48, 46, 47. It'll do all its expanding and it won't do any pushing through all that expansion. All right. Because they supposedly outrun the object, they're pushing. So it's exactly the opposite. The object outruns them. So you didn't get that even as a concept correct. Okay, is one of those arguments that sounds profound until you remember that springs have been studied. Okay, so this is the big lie. Studied, measured, modeled, and abused in labs for about, check notes, 4 centuries. Okay, so this is just a monstrous lie. We know there hasn't been any because you can't post a link to any. So come on, I can show you videos from the 60s where they're measuring the mass of an electron. They're doing all kinds of fancy experiments. How come you can't show me any of those shows where they explain how springs work? There's no show from the 60s explaining how springs just can't possibly return the energy they store. There's no such evidence. All right. The whole physics never talk about this angle collapses. Well, no, it doesn't, because it's going to show your argument is collapsed by the fact that you won't provide a link to any analysis, any papers, anything, okay, that demonstrates that physics took the subject seriously at all. That in any experiment it ever conducted, it pointed out to the audience, the children, that, well, you can't take this too seriously because, see, we say it's elastic, but it's really not very elastic. Yet we lose a ton of energy on every interaction. They don't say that because then they couldn't lie about what they're proving, because what they're proving is dependent on an idealization that just isn't true. All right, the moment you release entire fields, let's see, let's do that sentence again. The whole physics never talk angle collapses the moment you realize entire fields. Amazing. So show me. Elasticity theory, material science, continuum mechanics. Where's any? I'm just saying, show me. Is it too much trouble for you to link me to some of all this analysis that went on? Please. All right, exists specifically to talk about this. Well, where is the conversation? Because I can't find it. I can't find it. Okay. The only people not discussing it are the ones convinced they've discovered a loophole in Newtonian mechanics by staring at a slow-mo video of a tennis ball. Well, it's pretty revealing. I mean, it's the kind of thing you can't see in real motion. So I'm just saying it does help a lot to see it in slow motion. So he's ragging on slow motion as if this isn't one of the most brilliant tools of insight that mankind ever created. I mean, slow motion of bullets and all these things is completely, I mean, it just defines the science almost, because the information is so thick and deep about what actually happens. And here he is mocking that. I mean, this is the credibility of these assholes that show up to argue. So this is the best their science can produce. So 100 views, maybe 200, maybe this thing will get 500 views. And these are the only morons that are going to show up to opine. Because nobody who has any credibility can afford to ruin their reputation by defending this nonsense. All right. The core problem is that the argument treats the spring like a cartoon slingshot that snaps forward. So more of these weird little analogies and metaphors. So a cartoon slingshot. Slingshots are an interesting bit of science also. That snaps forward faster than the object it's pushing. So again, it's slower than the object it's pushing. So you still aren't getting the simplest concept right. I mean, it's not outrunning it, it's underperforming. It's moving slower than the object it pushed. It's still moving, and it hasn't given all its energy away, and that's the simple argument. So it's going to be wasted in a pointless oscillation that's not going to be converted into linear motion. This is especially true when you do experiments. Let's say you're going to bounce something on a spring. The last thing you want to do is not have the spring connected to the ground. Because now you're going to have two problems. Not only is your spring going to, move slower than the object it's pushing, the whole spring is going to maybe leave the surface. And so now you've wasted all the energy of moving the entire spring, giving the entire spring momentum. So you even got greater losses. All right. I mean, these are facts I did point out to these KE truthers, and they did experiments that just ignored it. They mocked the idea that you have to mount the spring to the surface? I don't have to do that. Yeah, you do. Anyway, lose contact, and then skulls in the corner vibrating with waste energy. Yes, that's a concept. We can put it in quotes like it's a funny word, but it's a real thing in the sense it's energy not going to be doing the work you intend. The work you intend is linear motion transfer. You don't intend to create oscillation in the spring. All right. In reality, a spring and the mass it is pushing remain in contact until the spring reaches its equilibrium length. So it's just a lie. You can say that's true, but you have no evidence that's true, so that's just a lie. We know that it has to extend longer. So if I compress a spring, it will extend longer than it was in equilibrium or without contact pressure. So it's going to extend quite a bit longer. So again, he doesn't even have that basic physics right. And he's going to be this arrogant, obnoxious Robbie the Butthole is going to make these claims like he's an authority, and he can't even get that simple principle right. That the spring doesn't go to equilibrium and then stop suddenly. Doesn't happen. Alright, that's literally how Hooke's law works. No, it's literally not. Okay, and you can watch Hooke's law on a spring that remains attached to the weight, and you can watch it oscillate 100 or 150 times because it's not losing energy as aggressively. Because the only energy it's losing is to heat. Okay, it's not losing it to inability to give the proper accelerations and decelerations. Right, the force is continuous until the extension is zero. So we know the extension goes beyond zero. So it's just silly and stupid for him to make this argument. Alright, the only way the spring lets go early is if the setup is physically sloppy. So this is just idiotic. So the other guy conceded the point entirely. This guy is saying, no, it doesn't work that way. Sometimes somehow the spring remains in contact with the surface the entire time of the spring, the object, and all the energy goes in. And it doesn't. It's just wrong. So he cited these sciences that say have studied this, and he's got no evidence, and especially studied it and found this conclusion that somehow springs are much more efficient. When it's obvious of their inefficiency is obvious in the sense that the very tennis ball example of 25% of the energy lost is an awful lot of energy for there to be losing. Like pushing a marble with a slinky. That's not a physical paradox. That's just bad engineering. So again, the fact is you could re-engineer that experiment. You can do it well or you could do it badly. Now, if you have the slinky laying on a surface, well, yeah, it's not going to be able to keep its energy because of the friction. But if you figure out how to suspend the slinky so there is no less losses to friction, why can't it push a marble? You're saying it can't? I'm saying I think it can, jackass. Yeah. Anyway, the claim that light objects cause more waste because the spring oscillates more is also backwards. So this is their logic. I mean, it's backwards? No, it's exactly the point. Where did that energy to oscillate come from? It can only come from the spring's compression. So if I compress a spring and I put an object in front of it, like a pinball machine, I pull the spring back, I'm going to now hit the little ball with the spring's energy. And everybody knows who's played pinball that the little thing wobbles. Okay, so the ball leaves, but the thing's still going bang, 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 bang. It's doing a whole bunch of wobbling. His argument is somehow that's not the spring's energy. Somehow the spring energy made the ball move, but it didn't make the spring move and the plunger move. So the little stick wobbling has nothing to do with anything. Oh, bullshit, it doesn't. Anyway, a light object accelerates more because, see, this is just a lie. So I'm just sorry. The whole point is that, no, that's not true. So you can shove that crap up your butt because the whole argument is you're not going to be able to demonstrate that's true. So I think it is a provable fact. The energy is not in the object. The fact is the energy is not in the tennis ball, okay, in any other form than silly oscillations that are useless. It's not in the tennis ball as linear motion. So the spring didn't convert the energy to linear motion. That's an absolute proven fact, and you're just now lying. Okay. Not because the spring has somehow, what is this? Sprinting ahead. So what is this? He keeps saying it, the spring sprinted ahead. How could the spring go ahead of the object? It's just so idiotic that he's got it backwards. No, the spring is lagging behind. It's pushing. It gave a whole bunch of energy, but it's gotten tired, okay, as it was pushing, and now it can't push as aggressively, and so it can't keep up with the object it pushed. All right, ahead of it. The spring oscillation after release isn't mysterious leftover momentum. Well, yes it is, asshole. It's such an obvious argument. It had to come from the spring, you jackass. It had to come from the elasticity of the tennis ball. It didn't create linear motion. It created a useless oscillation. And that's an absolute fact that it came from the compressed energy in the tennis ball. The oscillation is trapped energy. You are a dumb motherfucker. All right. It's internal dampening. Oh, so he doesn't understand that dampening came from where? Where did they get the energy to do the dampening that you're arguing? And it's not really dampening, but whatever. Hysteresis. No, it's energy, not linear motion. It's energy still in the fucking spring. It's in the tennis balls in its motion. Now, if I had used a spring instead of a tennis ball, the spring would be moving, and the tennis ball wouldn't be moving as fast as it should. And that's the obvious argument, and you're just denying it, plainly. You're denying an absolute fact. So go ahead. So you've proved my point again, that you people have no credibility in this conversation. You just make these outlandish assertions and you can produce zero evidence. So there's not a single link here produced where we have any documentation for any of these accusations this moron is saying. Okay. And minimal deformation. So it's quite obvious it's a ton of deformation, oscillating deformation. All right. Real springs don't behave like ideal massless rods. So, and again, a massless rod is a completely different elastic device in that it doesn't store anything. So that's the big difference. It doesn't store anything that we can figure out how to keep it in the rod. So we don't have any mechanism to store energy that travels through a steel rod. They flex. So this is a waste of time. Heat up and ring like a metal tuning forks, right? And what are tuning forks an example of? You put a bunch of energy in, it oscillates, and that's the energy leaving through the atmosphere. put the tuning fork in a vacuum, it lasts longer, but all of that motion is going to eventually get lost to a percentage of the energy not going into that oscillation, turning into heat instead. So again, it's another example that you can't keep the energy in the storage device. That's where the missing energy goes. Well, at least he's conceding it's missing energy, right? Okay, so at least we got him to concede. Oh, yes, it is missing energy. The oscillating of the tennis ball is missing energy. So at least he's conceding the point now. I mean, this is just such crap these people type. All right, these truthers. Anyway, this is why a steel ball bounces higher than a rubber one. So how is it why? So again, have you explained why? There's no storage in the steel ball. I'm sorry. So you got the two arguments aren't really, you can't make the same argument because it's not a release problem. You can't release the steel ball energy. Okay, so there's no even a question about having it compress and then releasing it. Can't happen. And why precision springs and clocks can't run for years with minimal loss. How precision springs and clocks can run for years. So we know the springs and clocks are giving away a minute amount of energy. So it's minute. That's the real argument. It's so tiny. That's all they need to keep the pendulum, or the oscillator oscillating, is to inject a tiny amount of energy. All right, and the bouncing ball example doesn't show what the OP, I don't know what this OP thing thinks is anyway, and the bouncing ball example doesn't show what the OP thinks it shows. So clearly it is showing exactly that. It's showing that the energy, there's energy in the spring that isn't in the linear motion. Period. End of sentence. Fact. Okay. When the ball leaves a surface oscillating, that's not evidence of some hidden, unaccounted for energy leak. Well, of course it is evidence of a leak, because it could only come from the spring's compression. So again, he's arguing somehow the oscillation is free energy. We didn't have to use the spring's compression to produce it. And obviously it did. It's the difference between the ball going in and the ball coming out. The ball goes in, not oscillating. Comes out, oscillating. Clearly, where did it get the energy to oscillate? Oh, it had to get it from the energy that would have been linear motion. So again, this is just like the big wheels on a car thing. Heavy wheels. You put heavy wheels on a car, it's going to store a bunch of energy in the wheels. That's not going to be linear motion. The spinning little round wheels don't have any connection to the energy, because it's energy going around in a circle. It's not linear. So it steals energy from the linear motion. The wheels are a drag to the linear motion. They've consumed the energy you would have had. That's why things go faster and slower down ramps based on where their energy is, on the outside or the inside, because you're changing how much momentum you've wasted on rotation. Another huge fact. Now that has been talked about by Galileo and others. All right, the vibrations are the energy loss. So here it is again. He's conceding it's an energy loss, and then he says it's not. There's no loss. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The vibrations are the energy loss, heat, sound, internal modes. So again, and yeah, oscillating is one of those internal modes. Not some secret stash of momentum the universe forgot to track. The whole point is in tracking it, you recognize that, yeah, it's 25% of lost energy. You lost a bunch of linear motion because now you're moving springs instead of moving a cart a speed. Oh, I mean, this is so bad, so ridiculous. If anything, the visible wobble is a big neon sign saying this is why the bounce wasn't perfectly elastic. Exactly my point. So what the fuck? I mean, what a lying sack of shit to type all this crap pretending somehow this isn't a pure indication of an inefficiency in the spring when he's going to say this is why the bounce wasn't perfectly elastic. Yeah, it wasn't even close. And like I said, the tennis ball example, it's not even close, frankly. 25% of lost linear motion is not a small loss. That's gigantic. All right. So no, springs aren't violating conservation laws. There was no argument that they're violating conservation laws. The argument is simple, that in experiments you have to be aware of these losses, and if you're not taking them into account, because you'll lose more the lighter the object you're pushing. The lighter the object you're pushing, the more energy is going to be left in the spring. That's the argument of the post, moron. You're not on the subject anywhere. Okay. And physicists aren't hiding some embarrassing oversight. Well, my whole argument is they're distorting and perverting and lying about it. They're saying that there's somehow you can change the octane of the gasoline, that somehow you can make the explosive more explosive. And no, you fucking can't. Okay, and they're using it to defend a kinetic energy theory. They're actually lying to kids, implying that somehow the kinetic energy is conserved because you lost so much energy. The only way they can make the kinetic energy be conserved is they have to make the light things go a lot slower so that's the same energy as the heavy thing. So the light things have to go incredibly slow. So they, 1.4 the velocity kind of argument. They somehow have to make, right, the light thing go 1.4 the velocity. Well, what's a great way to make the light thing go 1.4 the velocity? Oh, that's right, steal a whole bunch of its energy by using an inefficient spring. That'll do the job. All right, the only paradox here, so I didn't mention any paradox, but clearly the fact is that this is evidence of incompetent science. It's just demonstrating how wrong they are. This is back to Deschardelet and denting clay with round objects. You're not paying any attention to details. This is like fooling people, dumb people with a pointed arrow and, shooting it and saying, look how far the pointy arrow went in. It went in so much deeper, see, because that proves it has more energy. You're the flat earthers in this conversation. You are KE truthers. You're just making up fake bullshit science to defend your irrational religion. All right. You're just gluing fossils together. I mean, you're just fakers. All right. The only paradox here is how confidently certain people reinvent. So there's nothing reinvented. This is just a basic mechanical truth. It's perfectly illustrated in the tennis ball. I mean, you can't get a clearer. I mean, you could get a clearer. This was a rather irritatingly, whatever they did to the frame rates to kind of fuck it up a little. But it clearly just shows, yes, look at all this wobbling energy. Yes, big waste. All right, let's see. 18th century mechanics while accusing everyone else of not understanding physics. Well, you've clearly shown you don't understand the physics because somehow you're saying that the wobble isn't the energy, but then you say this is why the bounce wasn't perfectly elastic. So I don't know what your argument is. The clear point is that 75%, only 75% of the energy was returned. That's called inefficient. Okay, and that's a problem in experiments if that inefficiency goes up, the lighter the object you're using. So if that inefficiency gets worse and worse, the lighter the object, then obviously your experimental results are going to be suspect. And they're suspect. Okay, what part of the spring-mass interaction still feels unresolved to you after looking at the actual mechanics? So what a bizarre question. The actual mechanics are that the lighter I make that tennis ball, the more the losses are going to get higher and higher and higher in terms of the lack of conversion into linear motion. And that fact, okay, is what we're arguing more on. And you're nowhere near the subject. And you've certainly produced no credible citation to any physicist defending your insipidly stupid position, where you couldn't even figure out the spring is moving slower than the object it's pushing, not faster. Take a little pause. All right, continuing. So the Euler Lime is going to basically endorse that silly explanation. Yep, exactly right. So it's exactly right that somehow the spring is going too fast. No, that's not the problem. Anyway, if you attend any mechanics, engineering, or advanced physics course, so again, there's just no evidence of this anywhere in any of those lectures. So you can't find a Lewin lecture, you can't find any lecture where this is talked about at all. So just a big fat lie. Above the usual introductory freshman level, well, obviously, like I said, they have 103, they have 105, they have the second year students, third year students. The lectures are all online, so just lie some more. People talk about this by modeling the mass of a spring itself. So where? Can you show us? How do you know this exists? Did you attend one of these things? Because there's no video of it. Okay, so if you're going to claim it exists, there should be some resource you use to know this fact. So what resource did you use to know this fact that they do this modeling of the spring's inefficiency? Where is this modeling done? Please show me. All right. The introductory course, people take an idealization of a massless spring, which to an approximate degree works. So it's the whole argument is it's not working at all. It's just a huge distortion because you're using it to explain why your fast things aren't moving as fast as they should. So you're using it to say, look, we conserve the kinetic energy when you really didn't conserve it, okay, in the sense that you lost a whole bunch of linear motion in your experiment. The lighter objects are not going anywhere near the speed they should be going if they got all their energy. You're using it to claim 1.4. That's what it's actually been used for in previous experiments by your KE truthers. You're using it to say, look, it only went 1.4. Well, it only went 1.4 because you couldn't get all the energy back into the object, of the lighter object, because it's going twice as fast. And going twice as fast means it's losing twice as much, more than twice as much the energy. All right. What matters is that the ratio of the spring's mass to the launched object's mass is relatively small. So again, more talk about the mass. We're talking about the force in the spring. And the object, in some respects, I could state that you have no evidence it's about the mass of the spring technically. It's about the force or torque that the spring contains. And the fact is you're not getting that torque out of the spring. All right. In no experiment where you launch objects above the spring's weight, let's see, where you launch objects does the spring's weight as much. So again, this is in a sentence. In no experiment where you launch objects does the spring's weight as much as the object being launched. And again, it doesn't matter. We're talking about the amount of energy it has in it. So I could argue that you can see this in springs bouncing. So if you drop an object on a spring, the spring compresses and then the spring and the object launch off the surface. And now the spring is oscillating in the air. So again, to talk about that there's that's just nonsense. Of course, you don't have any evidence that this isn't a significant amount of energy. All right. In fact, the spring's weight is usually 100 times smaller. Yeah, again, so it's not about the mass of the spring. It's about the torque in the spring. Okay. Whether inefficiency, whatever inefficiency results from that cannot explain why experiments that contradict draft science. So again, obviously if the tennis ball is losing 25% of its linear motion, that's huge. And I guess the argument is that you could see that in their bouncing experiment, in their experiments, because you could see that the spring and the ball that they're launching are both moving. So again, that's a bunch of waste energy. So to sit there and argue that it's not significant when it's proven by the fact that you don't get more than 5 or 6 bounces. The object comes down, it bounces 5 or 6 times, and that's it. So you are losing more than 15% of the energy per bounce. That's the obvious fact. The fact that you can't make it bounce more than 5 times, 6 times is a gigantic indication of a huge amount of energy loss. If I put energy into a lever and it's oscillating, it'll oscillate 100 times easy. So it's not losing nearly, it's losing 1% per oscillation, if not less. Clearly these springs are losing a ton more percentage, 10%, 15%, 20%. And the whole argument is they're going to lose even more percentages, higher percentages, the faster they're going. The faster they're going, the higher the percentage of the loss. So you're just such liars. All right, yes, it's honestly one of the big tells that draft science whole framework is built on. So my whole framework isn't built on springs. My whole framework is built on that you have zero fucking evidence. So 350 fucking years and you haven't produced one single shred of evidence that it takes 25 times the fuel to move something 5 times as fast. It's silly religious nonsense, and you have zero credible evidence demonstrating this has anything to do with reality. So you're the one debunked, asshole. Clearly, your framework is nonsense, but you can't produce any evidence defending your silly framework. You have no picture of a quark. You have no picture of wormholes. You have no picture of a goddamn thing. None of your silly science has been demonstrated with anything called a credible experiment. That's the absolute fucking fact. All right. Is built on misunderstanding rather than actual mechanical principles. So again, if I have to drag up the old physicist Michael experiment, I'll drag it up and just show heavy masses, say 3,000 joules. Light masses, 2,000 joules. How come the difference? The same spring, how come the huge difference in the amount of momentum released by the spring? Huge difference. Again, it's just like them asserting that somehow a lighter bowling ball locks down more pins. There's no evidence of any such thing. So that'll be the next post, maybe. Let's see. Once you get past toy model, so this is just I'm asking you to show a real model. I'm asking you to show me the real science, analyzing how much degrade you get in these elastic mechanisms. How far from the ideal the elastic mechanisms are. You have no science studying it. Okay. Massless spring, idealization. So I haven't even heard them say any of that crap. I mean, Lewin doesn't say anything about a massless spring when he's doing the air track experiment or some other experiment. So obviously this is just bullshit, right? They're just pretending that this has something to do with something. No, it doesn't have anything to do with anything. Idealization from freshman physics. So everybody should ask, well, if springs are so inefficient, how do they get the same energy out of those experiments? Oh, maybe that has something to do with the air track itself and the fact that it's an energy engine. Blowing all that air is just free energy just waiting to be used for some, just tilt the cart a little tiny bit and off it goes. Maybe that has something to do with it. Yeah, maybe it has everything to do with it. Every proper mechanics or engineering course explicitly deals with springs mass. So this is just such a lie. Okay, there's no dealing with it at all, so just lie. And again, it's not about its mass, it's about the torque it's stored and how effective it is at getting that torque into the object it's pushing. And the clear fact is it can't get it in when it stops pushing. Whatever it has when the object leaves, breaks contact, it can't get any of that into the object. The object's gone. It still has pushing energy, but it can't use it because the thing it was pushing is just gone too fast. Distributed inertia, so lie, dampening, this has nothing to do with anything, and real world elasticity. So none of this is explaining at all why the tennis ball has lost 25% of its linear motion. So it's just they're denying the existence of that loss and pretending it didn't happen. None of this is some hidden secret. The argument is the hidden secret is you're deceiving people with rubbish science. That's the hidden secret. And because this is rubbish science. This is, again, Madame Chartelet dropping round objects and denting the surface of clay with them and not realizing that's as lame as putting a point on an arrow and then saying, look, the arrow went in deeper. More energy. No, it's not more energy. This is just disgraceful that I'm the only person that makes these arguments and that these people get away with this silly, crappy science. It's just crappy science. To defend Chartelet is to do crap science. It's voodoo science. It has nothing to do with reality. And to defend spring experiments where you're not accounting for these huge losses, 10% is huge, 15% is gigantic, 25% is monstrous. Okay. It's literally standard curriculum. So there's no standard curriculum, just a big lie. When Lewin does the experiment, he doesn't tell the audience, these springs lose 25% every time we do this bouncy thing. So it is sort of bullshit. Okay. And as you said, the mass ratio is the key point. In any real launcher, the spring is tiny compared to the projectile. So again, he keeps arguing that this is just about the mass. Now, clearly it's about the mass when the mass spring actually launches off the surface of the ground. That's about the mass. But clearly the torque in the spring isn't about the mass of the spring. It's about the stiffness of the spring and the capacity of the spring to expand at what velocity, the speed at which the spring is capable of moving. Obviously, the slower the spring, the worse this condition gets. when the spring is 20 times lighter. So they keep pretending this is about how heavy the spring is. It's not about how heavy the spring is. The energy it keeps for its own oscillation is correspondingly tiny. So obviously the rubber of a tennis ball is pretty heavy. So we know that that spring obviously stores a lot of energy by oscillating. It takes a lot of energy to move all that rubber around. Okay, now a regular spring is much lighter, but again, it doesn't have anything to do with how much torque is stored in the coils of the spring, and that's what you're releasing, is the torque in the spring, not the weight of the spring. The spring's not using its momentum to push the object, it's using the torque trapped in its compressed coils. The compressed coils store the energy. It's not stored as the MV, the mass of the spring. The mass of the spring is almost irrelevant to how well a spring works. Mass doesn't tell you how well a spring works. Heavy springs don't work better than light springs, kind of argument. That's why engineers can design spring-powered systems with extremely high efficiency. So again, he says it again. There's absolutely no evidence that a clock spring is hugely efficient. The evidence is that the spring is providing a tiny amount of pressure constantly. Tiny. And so it only needs to apply a tiny amount of energy. Actuators, valve springs, even ballistic test rigs. So this is all just such a lie that if any of this has been tested. Just an overt, disgusting lie. And the fact that nobody shows up to say, okay, yes, these people are making lie arguments. These arguments aren't credible. This doesn't have anything to do with science. None of this. They can't demonstrate any of this. Zero evidence that clocks have incredibly efficient springs in them. It's just such bullshit. All right, without running into mysterious losses, draft science insists must exist. Well, obviously I'm arguing that they must exist in the sense you can't get around the fact that when you're pushing something with a spring and the thing can in fact end up going faster than the spring is going because the spring is going to expand, okay, and slow down. And as the spring is slowing down, it's not going to be in contact anymore with the object. So all of the slowing down, all of the decelerating compressions in the spring where it's restoring the energy in expansion, none of that energy gets into the object, and all of that left in the spring oscillating. I mean, not to be able to concede that, yes, the oscillating spring after the event is evidence of energy lost. It's that simple. You can understand the only place the energy can come from is what was stored in the spring. If the spring is oscillating after the experiment, it's just plain factual evidence that all the energy didn't get into the object. I mean, I shouldn't have to make that argument to anybody above, a 12-year-old? Like, the flaw in draft science argument is that he treats the idealization model as if physicists believe it's a perfect description of reality. That's not the problem. The problem is you're using springs in experiments and saying, look, I'm proving something. And you're not accounting for this overtly huge variable. This is a gigantic variable. When you're getting 2,000 total energies, momentums out of something, and then 3,000 in two different experiments with the same explosive, right? You're making the same explosive produce a different amount of total MV into the universe. That's a problem for your physics, because you do have to understand that the two explosives, it's all the same. You can't make the gas have a higher octane by putting lighter things next to it. It's just bullshit for you to argue that that's possible. All right. Then declares victory when real objects behave like real objects. So just a lie. So it's just, the fact is they're just ignoring the truth, okay, that, yeah, it's just a fact that you will lose more energy the lighter the object you push. If I pushed a piece of styrofoam with a spring, the styrofoam, first off, won't go near the speed it needs to go to transfer the energy. So to transfer the energy because of its MV, right, the spring has trapped in an amount, and it's not going to be in any way be able to acquire the velocity because the spring can't move fast enough. It needs a velocity of 1,000 miles an hour. The spring can't move that fast even when there's air in front of it, just air. So the spring can't possibly move the styrofoam at the necessary speed. So right there you can understand, yeah, there's no possibility the spring can transfer the energy. because it can't even go as fast as it needs to go to make that thing move that fast. So, just absolute facts. And they're ignoring them to, lie to kids, to molest the mind of children, with a silly fable, a silly religious pile of mush. And it's disgusting that none of you have any integrity and can show up and say, yes, that's really evil. That they're lying about how springs work, and they're lying how they distort experimental results. It's disgusting that they can't man up and say, yes, the Chardonnay was wrong, and it was always wrong to do spring experiments where, you're taking advantage of the fact that the spring is profoundly inefficient at pushing lighter things. He never engages with the actual math. Oh, so what was your math? You didn't show any math, you liar. Okay. And distributed mass. So what does this have to do with anything? Dampening. Again, he's using the word dampening like this somehow has something to do with it. There's no fucking external force dampening anything. So that's just a lie. So the dampening isn't an issue here. It's just a lie. Never models the system properly. So again, I'm at least drew it. You didn't. At least I'm showing you a tennis ball oscillating. So I'm showing you evidence of the phenomenon. What are you doing? You didn't show anything. And never compares his claims to measured data instead. So there's no measured data here. He takes a slow motion video, eyeballs some vibrations, and concludes that mainstream physics is wrong. Well, I didn't do any of that. I found the video online. There's lots of oscillating balls online. And so, like I said, Steve Mould probably has a better one. But he's studying angular, he's studying how balls bounce different angles, okay, based on how they compress, how sticky they are with a surface. But clearly the same phenomenon. Ball goes into the surface perfectly still, comes out all kinds of wacky. Meanwhile, the engineers of the world has been qualifying these exact vibrations for decades. So just what a lie. Just a lie. Come on, show me one engineer doing so. With strain gauges, accelerometers, high precision energy measurements. Absolute lies. Their energy measurements are they put light things in front of it and say, gee, that's the number we want. And then when later we want a different number, let's put heavy things in front of it and we'll get a completely different number. Once again, their theory can't even move a spaceship in space. You calculate the kinetic energy of the thrust, you get a useless number, doesn't mean a damn thing. You calculate the momentum of the thrust, you get exactly how much you're going to move. They haven't dealt with that argument. All right. The irony is that the problems he points out are already well understood. So what a lie. So he can't link me to a single conversation, a single statement by a physicist acknowledging the fact that the springs aren't anywhere close to idealizations. Fully accounting for or experimentally verified. So just nothing. The only thing missing is draft science willingness to look at the actual... It's so amazing. Look at the physics that they won't show me. I've been saying, show me, show me, show me. It's written in these posts where I say, show me, show me, show me, and they won't show me shit. Because they don't have shit. Because it's an absolute lie that they've studied it or they've even acknowledged it as an existing thing. They haven't even acknowledged the fact that springs are less efficient the faster you're trying to push something. And it's just an absolute fact. Okay, actual physics instead of reinventing it from scratch. I'm not reinventing it from scratch. I'm going back to where scientists had integrity because they had to argue with each other. They didn't all believe this. They weren't all group thinkers. They weren't all Catholics. All right, just showing up all over the world and saying, do you believe in this book? If you don't believe in this book, we're going to ban you. Yeah, we'll kill you. You're just like the Inquisition. There's no difference. You would if you could. That's the simple truth, right? They would kill all opposing voices if they could, because they can't handle the fact that there's a competing story out there. That's what they can't handle. That's why they have to get so aggressive, is because they just can't handle the fact that they someday will be proven to be silly dupes, liars, child molesters, in the sense of, breaking what would be the intrinsic logic of our capacity to be intrinsically logical in our observations, to understand the real world, to understand I can't walk through a tree, so I have to walk around it. Our brain is really good at this stuff. But the problem is our brains are also good at mimicking, and we're also afraid to be different. And so people will believe this silly totem pole bullshit, that they have these silly rituals. Don't step on the crack, you break your mother's back. All this superstition, and that's all these people are selling, is superstition science. Well, what a sack of lying crap. So not a single link to any credible physics anywhere in this, and no fucking demonstration that this phenomenon doesn't take place, and that it isn't significant. It's a significant amount of degraded performance, let's call it inefficiency in the transfer of energy. Absolute fact that they're absolutely denying. All right, so this is one of the videos linked to. So this is a Michael Falwell video. An idiot, frankly. I mean, probably has a real idiot condition of some kind, where it's like formally declared an idiot. So idiocy, atrocity. So he's got some sort of like real idiot syndrome. But anyway, so this is all they can do. They can link to this crap by, what would technically be describable as a cartoon character. I mean, that's his iconic cartoon character. And it's a dumb cartoon character, which is, not ironically insignificant, that he chooses a cartoon character that was known for being an imbecile. So, it's all part of the story, I think. But anyway, that's the blind leading the blind. I could even make that kind of statement.
It seems to be making some arguments about spring.
So it's impossible almost to hear what he's saying, because he's an idiot. He doesn't really articulate very well.
And how inefficient springs are. I don't know what number you come up with, because you don't really pin yourself down.
I know, I do pin myself down. I mean, obviously, if this thing only bounces 5 times on a spring, you can figure out that, well, the average is, okay, it's got to be losing 15% every time it bounces, right? I mean, come on, 20%, on average. So it's a huge amount of energy it's not returning. Duh. Yeah, that's the test, moron. Oh, God.
To any sort of statements, therefore you can't be challenged on it. So I don't know what percentage you're saying. I think mindless marble.
Well, who tested this? So again, this is the joke, right? Yeah, we know a tennis ball is vaguely 25%, right? I asked Google because no one studied it, so Google just said 25%. We must know it from some reference somewhere. But the fact is, yeah, your science hasn't tested any of this stuff. It's indifferent to the whole subject. And the fact is that you lose more energy the higher the velocity. They haven't tested either. But I think the point is it's obvious.
Just mentioned that you were saying they're about 70% efficient. Where you come up with that number, I don't know. But obviously you can't.
So I said in the video, so this is a year ago. Like I said, I made a ton of videos on the subject. I pointed out all this stuff. So that's just lying again. It's just lying to say that I brought up the subject and I didn't use the tennis ball example, because that's exactly the example I used, was the tennis ball.
Fantastic, these things. So if we were to take a mass and compress it onto a spring and then let it launch up, it will reach a height. And the height it reaches comes from the energy of the spring. That's a fact.
Well, the whole point of the experiment was to first drop an object onto the spring, compress it with a known amount of energy, and then see if it returns to that same height, which would indicate it conserved all of the energy. And that's where you're going to fail dismally.
You compress the spring, you let it go, boom, and it goes to a height. So the energy came from the spring. That's how it got there. Then when it gets there, it's in gravity then, and it's going to fall back down. So the potential energy in the spring.
So there's no potential energy in the object, but go ahead. And the spring already used its energy, and it's oscillating, so it still hasn't used all of its energy, obviously.
Converts to kinetic energy, it goes up, and that stores as potential energy.
Well, whatever. That's all the part where I say you're just making that crap up. There's no scalar energy, there's no kinetic energy, there's just the momentum. You're just going to return the amount of momentum. That's what's stored in the spring, is an amount of momentum.
In gravity. Now, it's going to fall back down, and as it comes down, it's going to land on the spring again. Now, if your claim is that it's the 70% inefficient, so as this is launched up, if there's say 100% of energy here, and only 70% of that energy goes in to launching that mass to that height, as it comes down, there won't be enough stored potential.
So again, this has been demonstrated. Like I said, there's no experiment where this spring, where they use a spring to oscillate something 100 times. So we already know that it's, it's not 1% loss. It's got to be more than that. It's, 2% loss would be 50, 3% would be whatever, 30. We're not getting anywhere near that number of oscillations, right? So you know that the percentage you're losing is significant.
Energy in gravity for it to compress the spring anywhere near down to what the original compression was of launching it.
So this was great, right? This is just so freaking clinical and brilliant, right? No. So far, oh duh.
You should see some significant difference, as it comes down. It's going to be, there's going to be some visible difference that it's not compressing the same because there was a loss of energy when it was launched. Obviously, there is going to be some losses because we have air resistance and we have friction. It's not a frictionless environment. And obviously, we've always got air to contain.
So you do understand he's going to completely, apparently, ignore the absolute fact that the spring is still moving after the object leaves. It's an absolute fact that every single example will show the spring is still moving after the object leaves. I mean, duh! You can't deny that one. Yes, we all know that there's some loss to heat and air resistance. We know that those are minor losses, and the argument is they're clearly minor compared to the inefficiency of the spring. Because we can just show you Steve Mould's experiment, where even in air, okay, and even without a cement floor, you can get a ball bearing to bounce 250 times. Obviously not that inefficient.
Well,
that's less than 1% loss per bounce.
So there's going to be some energy losses, some percentage. I don't know what that would be.
Right. So what use is this video as proving anything? Oh yes, no use at all.
Again, I could just do like you. I could just come up with a figure. I could say, that you're going to get 20% loss or 5% loss.
I didn't come up with one. I came up with the fact that science doesn't have one. I researched it. I couldn't find any information anywhere that studies this phenomenon. Nothing. Zero. Not a single physicist talking about it. Nothing. Zero. That's not my bad. That's physics' bad. That it doesn't even acknowledge the existence of this phenomenon. So it does experiments with springs, and it doesn't acknowledge that springs don't go anywhere near the idealization.
Just make a figure up, but realistically there's going to be some energy loss as we launched up, because it's it's going in the up, it's travelled up there with some friction, and air resistance, it's travelled down with some friction.
So, and we know when it's going fast, it's going through the gravity quickly, and when it's going slow, it's going through the gravity slowly. And so the real point where it's really losing a lot of energy is the top 1/4. That's where half the speed, right? It's going 3/4 of the it's going half its speed 3/4 of the trip. So just understand that the other phenomenon here is you have to recognize that the proportions are way off in terms of the velocity is controlling how much energy you're losing, how rapidly you're losing it to gravity. So you're losing a ton in that last 1/4, and you're losing very little in the 3/4 of distance where you went fast. where the 1 second was where the unit of time was very quick for a very large distance. Because gravity is a time-dependent force, quite obviously. Again, that I have to keep defending this fact that it's 9.8 meters per second of added velocity per 1 second. That's the actual gravitational formula. And the fact that you people won't even acknowledge that obvious truth is so glaring.
And our resistance. So it's not going to be perfect, but you're saying there's a good, 30% loss in efficiency. Again, don't know where you come up with that number, because I'm pretty sure you haven't tested it.
So I don't know what this lie is about this 30%. I don't think I ever argued it was 30%, but whatever. I said it could be as bad as, maybe.
Because you don't test anything.
So, big lie. It's not my obligation to test anything, frankly. You're the one making these assertions about your Jesus walking on water. I don't have to prove he didn't walk on water. You have to prove he did. Show me a quark. Shut up and show me some dark matter. Shut up and show me some of this crap actually being true.
Just pluck numbers out your head, and make stuff.
No, that's your science. I didn't know. I asked your science, what's the answer, and they didn't have one. Fact.
Statements.
I would have used their answer. I used Google's best answer. That's all I could get from science was Google's best to guess. I didn't do anything wrong here. I didn't try to deceive anybody. I was trying to get the real answer. Your science doesn't have the real answer. That's the absolute fact, retard. That's why your video is the only video on the subject, right? Except for me talking about it. Now you're the only person talking about it on the internet. You don't get that, retard? That you're now an authority somehow because you're the only person talking about it? And obviously you're a crappy authority.
Suit your arguments, I suppose in your world, if they were 70.
So all this time wasted on, stuff that just couldn't make a difference. 20, 40, 70, who cares what the number is? You're going to prove something, so go ahead and prove it.
Percent inefficient, it would, play to your ideas. But again, these things can be tested, so we'll move to that.
Yeah, thank you.
This footage is from another experiment, but I thought it'd be useful here.
So it'll be useless here, okay? Because what he won't show is how quickly it dampens to nothing. So it's going to lose all of its energy to this inefficiency. So it's not going to bounce and keep bouncing. It's going to lose a ton of energy, then a ton of energy, then a ton of energy, and then stop moving. That he's not going to show us.
So initial, I'm calling 0.75 centimeters, and then it's launched. The energy from the spring,
so the spring is
kinetic energy, but will raise.
Again, not attached. So the spring itself is moving up and vibrating. So you can see both units of lost energy, quite obviously.
To a height, I'm calling that at 7.5 centimeters. So that's its maximum height. Now I froze it, so
I don't know what the 7.5 is. Why is he saying, so he's just arbitrarily defining where the middle of this thing is, when he should just say, okay, it's 6. Yeah, the bottom line is 6.
I have an anti-gravity here, I've freeze framed it, and it will drop back down. You said it's 30% inefficient.
So the spring doesn't get all the way compressed. So that's another, you're saying, what the hell? You're dropping something on a spring and not allowing it to compress all the way. That's a little bit weird. But anyway, it doesn't really matter because we know it's not going to keep bouncing.
As you can see there, yes, there is a little bit of a gap. There is some loss, but it's certainly not 30%. And then obviously it's going to bounce back up. And that will show us how much energy there is left there. And I'm calling that
so I'll call it 5.5. No, it's really 5.3. So you lost, 0.7, and out of 6 units, so you're talking about more than 10%. So it's more than 10%. And like I said, if you let it keep bouncing, what are you going to see? And we know, again, just understand, this is the part where it loses most of the energy, where it's going the slowest. So the 0.7 here would be 15 in this faster range. So it's much more energy lost because of the fact that this is how much energy it's missing at the top portion. The top portion is the slowest portion. That's the portion where it's fighting the gravity the most friction, you could argue.
7 centimeters. So we've roughly got a difference of half a centimeter, 5 mil. Again, I froze it there. We're not doing anti-gravity.
So it's more than half a centimeter, obviously, but whatever.
And then it's going to drop back down after that. The slow-mo runs out.
Oh, yeah. So so conveniently, the slow-mo runs out. But he could show us it bouncing and just show us how many times it hits, bounces. And it'd be less than 10. So we know that it's more than 10% of the energy lost per bounce. Simple enough fact.
Just the idea that obviously it's taking the measurements roughly from the centre of mass.
So this isn't going to have anything to do with putting a light mass versus a heavy mass. So we're not going to see the difference between pushing a light thing and pushing a heavy thing, which is the real argument, is how much more efficient it is, how much more inefficient the spring is, the lighter the object you are pushing. So the whole argument is that if it's all about the weight of the object you're pushing. And the heavier it is, the less energy you'll lose. The lighter it is, the more energy you'll lose. So he used a pretty heavy socket on what looks like a pretty lame spring. So we know this is the heavy version. And this will be a lesser version. So if it's 10% at a heavy thing, it might be 15, 20, 25% the lighter you go. So this is just, again, more distortion. Let me lie to people, confuse the subject, and pretend it's not significant when it's very significant.
Initial to the centre of mass final. Calling the initial start position 0.75 centimeters. We've got a travel of 7.5.
So the 0.5 is a lie, right? You could just see it was obviously 3, not 5. So it was 7 that was missing.
So we take the 0.75 off the 7.5, and that gives us 6.75 distance. So that was for the first launch. As it came down, bounced again. We'll go with the same initial because it was practically there, and it got to 6.2. Got to 7. So minus the initial. We got a travel distance.
So all we know is the differential based on 6 units. So again, 6 units, you lost 0.7. So that's over 10%. And that's if you think the friction or the pressure is linear. The pressure isn't linear. Gravitational pressure isn't linear. Because in the first 3/4 of the voyage, you were going much faster.
6.25. So there's a difference of half a centimeter. 5.
So again, it wasn't a half a centimeter. So if I have to go, I can go back in the video, but it clearly wasn't half a centimeter. It was 0.7 of a centimeter.
Millimeters, however you want to say it. So the two distances, so 6.25 divided by 6.75 equals 0.9259, which can round up to 93. So
if he would have used 0.7, obviously it would have been more like 87% efficient. And that's with a heavy object. So how inefficient will it be when you go lighter and lighter? Oh, he didn't do that experiment, right.
93%. So after the initial launch, and obviously incurring some friction there, coming down, incurring some friction there, resistance there.
So the argument would be he's saying it does bounce 10 or 12 times. If I just let it go and let it bounce, it'll bounce 10 or 12 times. It won't bounce that many times. And he knows it.
Getting back up, and again, incurring friction, we have 93% efficiency. So which is nowhere near the claim.
Yeah, well, this obviously it is very near the claim in the sense I never claimed it was the same amount regardless of the weight of the object. The whole argument is that it gets worse and worse and worse the lighter the object you're pushing. So you didn't do a lighter object, did you? No, you didn't. So it's not even relevant to the subject. But you've conceded it's 93%. I'm going to argue, well, let's go back. I mean, it's not that hard to go back. And we just look at his lie, right? Because it's just a lie. Where the hell is the actual experiment? There it is. All right, so we know the bottom of the weight went to the 6th line, right? That's pretty much, right on the 6th line, right? You can see that, right? Yeah, you can see that. It's right on the 6th line. I mean, this ruler is so fucking sloppy. I mean, shit. All right, and so then the second iteration, all right, is here. So let's finish that.
How much energy there is left there, and I'm calling that.
So there you go. I mean, it's quite obvious that that's not halfway between the 6 and the 7. It's like 3. So there's 7 missing. 0.7 is missing, not 0.5. So again, cheat. So he's got his cheats. I mean, you can really see it on this side of the scale. That's almost a 2 there. So clearly it's not a ½ centimeter missing. It's more than a ½ centimeter. All right. So just, the fact that he had to lie about that part. And again, obviously, if he used 0.7, then he's, like I said, he'd be somewhere in the 80s, okay, in terms of the efficiency. And I argued the tennis ball was 75 efficient. So, we're just now saying, okay, what happens when you use a lighter object? So that's the big lie.
We're not talking about...
This is the quality of rubbish video they say I must debunk. I must show up to debunk all of this noise made by these flat KEers, the KE truthers. I have to show up and debunk every one of their silly, contrived piece of crap lie videos. And this is a lie video, right? We know he didn't do the right number here. It's obviously not half. It was obviously not a ½ centimeter. So he had to cheat right in front of us, okay, the number. And it's still 93% is a big number for a heavy object.
Fuzzy feelings here. We're talking about data points, actual real world evidence.
Okay, so real world contrived lie evidence. Okay, so he lied about how much it was deflected, and then he's lying about the fact that the real argument is that it gets worse the lighter the object. That this amount of waste or loss increases the lighter the object you're pushing. That's the whole point. The point isn't that you lose some energy. If you lost a consistent amount of energy regardless of the experiment, that would be fine. The fact that you're not losing a consistent amount regardless of the mass, that's the part that makes the experiment bogus. You idiot.
So your claim of spring inefficiency doesn't hold, does it? Also, I forgot to mention,
Liar.
obviously, the weight of the mass. It's less than 25 grams. So.
Less than, like 25 grams isn't any weight or something. So we know it's a piece of steel. So we know it's not an insignificant mass for the spring you're dropping it on.
Not heavy. Not, I don't know what your class is like mass. If we've got to extract some atoms and launch them, I don't know if we've got to go that light. But
the point is, it gets worse and worse the lighter you go. So what's complicated about that argument? It gets extremely bad if you go with an atom or a piece of styrofoam or a piece of dust. You lose 99% of the spring's energy. That's the whole point. It's 90. The piece of dust is 99, and then you just go down to heavier and heavier things. And if you were moving an elephant, then it would be 1%.
In my mind, 25 grams.
Because it's all about the velocity of the spring. When the thing leaves, obviously the higher the velocity of the spring, the more energy is still in it. The slower the velocity, the less energy is in it.
Isn't particularly heavy, because your contention was the lighter the mass, the less energy.
So again, he's arbitrarily defining it not a heavy thing. So a steel socket isn't a heavy thing, he's saying.
Would get in.
For the size of the spring, I'd say it was pretty heavy. I'd say it weighed 100 times the weight of the spring. So it makes it pretty heavy.
Into it. And clearly that's not the case, is it?
All right, so that was it. That was their brilliant video. So there is another one. I'll go find that. By the same moron, except it's even longer. So it's going to be even more tedious. Alright, so this moron video is 3 months ago. I probably haven't watched this one. I gave up watching and wasting my time on these Falwell videos. They're just such a waste of time. So he says something silly like, don't make assumptions. Oh, you mean assumptions like 4 times the distance is 4 times the energy when it isn't? 2 units of velocity, right? 2 units of gravitational force. So you're in the gravity twice as long and you have twice the velocity. Let's ignore those two facts and just pretend it's 4 times the energy. That's a silly assumption. You lose.
So what do we have today?
So this will be a series of videos intended to be brief on single subjects, for which I would like to hear a physicist explain how I'm saying or going to say something incorrect or wrong in the video about...
And why would you want that? Because when they do it, you ignore it and deny it.
The state of physics. So in this case... So it's a big lie about how I ignore it or deny it or any of this crap, so it's more bullshit. So this is the tennis ball. This is the actual video that I took the tennis ball from. And unfortunately, it's a pretty shitty one, but I just mean it was the one that was easy to access, so it was easy for me to copy. We're going to talk about springs. We're going to use a tennis ball as an example, so we'll start with that. I couldn't do...
Right, so we're talking about springs, and you're using a tennis ball.
Yes, tennis ball is a spring. It really is, frankly. You can use it as a spring. It's an elastic object. Hooke's law applies to all elastic experiments. Go read it on Wikipedia if you don't believe me.
As an example. Yeah, okay. If you'd wanted to show a spring, you're quite welcome to use my footage.
Yes, and your footage is a perfect example. The spring's flying in the air and wobbling. So yes, all of that energy didn't get into the object. So duh, yes, your spring experiments are a perfect example of the phenomenon, you lying sack of shit. Yes, you perfectly illustrate the problem. Thank you. Not a very good video for slow motion, but anyway, you get the drift. I hope you got the drift. The ball wobbles. So I said not a very good video. So it sounds like I might have said very good video, but no, it's not a very good video for slow motion because they, for some reason, edited it and made it all, didn't make it as fluid as it really is in real life. So it hits the ground.
Yeah, but it's a tennis ball.
So what's this crap? He puts these little starry things in the video. What the fuck is this horse shit for? Why? Why do this, moron? So you're supposed to take people seriously who do this to their own video? They put this crap in it? What the fuck?
It's made out of rubber and felt. It's spherical. It's got...
yeah, so what? It's an elastic device. You could actually use a tennis ball as a spring. They use it for boats, you know what I mean? They put tires on the side of a dock because they're elastic. The boat can bang into them and push back, and so they don't break the dock. Duh.
A lot more safe.
I mean, they could put springs on the side of the dock, right? But it's just easier to use something more durable.
Sorry, a lot more friction. It's not a spring. It's made out of an entirely different material. It will also...
It's an elastic object, and the argument is this is true for all elastic objects that store energy. So all elastic objects that store energy have this problem of being incapable of pushing light things with the same efficiency they push heavy things. That's the actual argument, and you're not on the subject, moron.
Be rotating when it hits a little bit, so it's not going to go back anywhere near all the amount of its energy. They're quite inefficient.
Okay, so and again, you're saying that springs are better. Well, prove it.
Thing. They're not designed to project something linearly.
And either are springs, in the sense that they aren't designed to be able to do something that's not possible. They can't be designed to do the impossible. It's not moving at all, right? It's nice and steady, and then when it bounces back, it's doing this. All right, and that's a problem because that motion is what really steals an awful lot of the ball's capacity.
Yes, it did, because they're not very efficient in going back there.
Okay, so again, he's arguing that springs are better, but he won't show any evidence that they're any better.
Because it's not a spring, it's a tennis ball.
All right, so anybody rational, right, can understand this is a silly argument. That I could use the tennis ball in an experiment, especially with a heavy object, that it's going to work the same way as a spring would work. It's just going to compress, okay? The ball is going to expand the rubber, and the rubber is going to return to its original condition just like a spring would. So it's going to functionally work just like a spring. release the stored energy. So you put the energy in, it compresses, it creates pressure, does all kinds of good.
Also, does it follow Hooke's law? Like a spring?
Yes, that's the argument. See, you didn't even read the Wikipedia page, right? So again, you're the ignorant person in this conversation. So go read the Wikipedia page. It has lots of sources referenced. All right, sorry. Yeah, well, lots of mistakes made. Sorry if I wasn't showing the video. I just noticed it wasn't showing. So I wanted to just point out that at that point where he was talking about how they can't be used as a spring, it's really obvious they can be used as a spring, because you can do the experiment where you put a basketball at the bottom, then a tennis ball, then a super ball or a golf ball, and then drop the whole thing, and you'll get a tremendous amount of momentum out of the golf ball. And you're getting it because you took all the energy from the heavy ball, it barely bounces, and the medium-sized ball barely bounces up. So all of their momentum is converted into linear motion of the golf ball. And so it also proves the idea that there are other devices besides a lever that will conserve the momentum, that is, change a big M and a small v into a big V and a small m. And so there are other mechanisms that'll do that. So that probably will be a future post where I'll explain how that mechanism could also be used, like a lever, okay, to convert a big mass with a small v into a big V and a small m. Quite perfectly. So anyway, so it's just silly for him to argue that tennis balls aren't springs. They are. And the whole argument is that, yes, Hooke's law has been found to be applicable in all elastic circumstances, even in the elastic circumstance of hitting an atom, you know, the electrons in an atom, that all elastic storage of compression, pressure, are consistent with Hooke's law. Yes, it's consistent throughout much of physics.
Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You'd have to research it, wouldn't you?
I did. So fuck you. You lose again. Things, and then it fails dismally to actually leave with the same velocity it went in with. And
yes, because tennis balls are pretty inefficient. They make a lot of noise as well, which is obviously energy loss.
Big problem is the fact that that ball is wobbling, which is the same, you could argue, as angular rotation in wheels on cars.
How is a tennis ball resonating after a bounce anything like angular rotation?
So he doesn't understand how losing energy doing this is the same as losing energy doing this. Yeah, so he doesn't understand the two ways you can trap energy, back and forth oscillator, or obviously a circular oscillator. He doesn't understand that because he's a dumb fuck. That it's energy that won't be linear motion. So the heavier the wheels, the smaller their turning radius, the faster the axle's spinning.
Learned something new there, have you? Add that to your repertoire. Just sneak that one in like you always knew that.
No, I'm not thinking like I always knew that. The point is it's another example of how the physics doesn't account for anything in these experiments. They make a low friction cart with tiny metal wheels. It's exactly, if you want to store a whole bunch of energy in the wheelbase, this is how you do it. So their low friction cart is really a low linear motion cart, and you can feel it when you push a cart that has a lot of wheels. You can feel it's kind of hard to give it a velocity because you got to make all those wheels turn, and all those wheels turning won't have anything to do with your linear motion. All right, I'm back, right? Yeah, okay. So yeah, it's sort of an important subject, right? That, and like he's true. Okay, 10 years ago, I had no idea. And so it wasn't until you start thinking about these experiments and you start analyzing and say, well, if I was going to make a low friction cart, why would I make a low radius wheel? Because that's a higher rotational speed. And that means all the mass of the wheel is going very, very fast. Why wouldn't I make a big giant wheel? Because then most of the rotational energy is moving kind of slowly, okay? It's not as fast a velocity. So I'm much better off, and my axle will go a lot slower the bigger my wheel is, right? So if my axle has at all got any weight to it, I'm going to really reduce how much energy I'm losing to spinning the axle because now it has so little mass and velocity. You know, its MV is really, really low with a big wheel. So, I mean, it's just a fact. And so, yeah, again, it's a fact. Nobody talks about it. No one gives a damn. When physicist Michael did the experiment, I brought it up in our live conversation. And he actually conceded, well, yeah, I didn't think of that, and I don't know. I can look it. I'll research it. He never researched. He never looked it up. But he acknowledged the fact that, okay, yeah, I didn't consider it. But it's a huge consideration. And the more you think about those carts and the way they use them, the more obvious it is. Why would you make a multi-wheeled, it has 6 or 7 or 10 wheels on it? Why would you make extra wheels on your cart if you intend to create linear motion with it? Because all of those wheels mean you're going to have to waste a whole bunch of energy spinning wheels that won't be linear motion. And that's just an absolute fact. So it's like just creating a flywheel or something else, and the flywheel won't be able to return the energy as linear motion. Now, it will be able to return it as impact energy. So if you measure the impact energy, you'll get the extra momentum back because the rotation will all be converted into motion this way. The wheels are turning this way, so they'll push that way into an object. So the collision will show you your actual energy, but your linear velocity won't unless you know how heavy those wheels are. This is real physics. I'm sorry, that's the real physics, okay? So the joke of this whole conversation is these lying sacks of shit won't even admit that that's a real phenomenon. That's a real fact. Okay, that you can't have the same linear motion from the same amount of energy if you change the size and density of your wheels. Heavy, small wheels will store a ton more energy than light, big wheels. Absolute fact. So when they make the mousetrap carts, you can see it, right? So when they make when they're trying to make a cart go the furthest out of the impact, out of the energy of a spring of a mousetrap, what do they make? They make big light wheels, not little heavy wheels. It's just an obvious fact, right? That, well, why is that? Yeah, because they have to minimize the amount of energy wasted as angular rotation of the wheels. Fact. Fuckers. That's flywheel. It's like if you have a flywheel in a car. You can, when I was a kid, I had one of those, you run it a few times, the flywheel spins, and then the car keeps going. Same idea. It's real force. You have to push it with real energy to get the flywheel going. And that's what the wheels are. They're just flywheels. And they're stealing your linear motion. It's a real fact, and it's really important. And you're trivializing it again. So again, they're just trivializing the real physics that underlie all of these experiments. They couldn't care less about the real physics.
Yeah, the other day you were telling a PhD physicist that couldn't be true. But anyway, there you go.
A liar. Yeah, I mean, what a lie. Where did I... that didn't happen, liar. It's ridiculous lies.
Go.
That's all energy that you won't see as linear motion because it's essentially stored energy. So in any experiment, the argument is that you're going to use springs in. And if you're going to have some assumption that you're getting most or all of your energy back.
But it's not an assumption because we can test these things. I will link to
So he's going to link to his 7% video that was a lie. Okay, it was over 10%. Okay, and 10% is a lot of fucking energy. Okay, and that was with a heavy object. An object 100 times heavier than the spring.
and a physical experiment where I showed the efficiency of a spring. I didn't just make up some number. I tested it.
You didn't test anything. You didn't test it with a lighter object at all. You didn't do any such thing, you liar. You're wrong. And if you have some assumption that it doesn't matter what mass you put on it, you'll lose the same proportional amount of energy, you're wrong. Okay, so that was the big one. Let's see if he has any reply to that. That's the big fact here, is that the lighter the object, the more you're going to lose.
And again, you're saying it's wrong. Have you tested it? Have you got any evidence to show this?
No, my argument is you don't have any evidence recognizing this theoretical, unavoidable, logical consequence. You can see the spring moving. Do I have to prove that the energy of the movement has to be energy the spring had, that it wasn't from God? There's not God energy making the spring wobble. It has to be the energy in that it's stored. So it has to be lost energy, waste. It didn't get converted into linear motion. Absolute fact. It's a pretty important subject. I haven't seen any physicist that talked about it. So, it's sort of glaring in terms of the fact that it really should be talked about by physicists.
Not if it's not a problem, they won't.
Okay, so he says it's not a problem. No. So what's the point, right? Is there any point in this shit? It's obvious it's a problem if it's true. And the fact is, it's true. It's actually what happens. They're going to do experiments where they're going to move objects with springs. And that includes a lot of experiments where they use a spring to create a super elastic experiment. So again, that's another concept here, right? Like I've said before, the air tracks can work perfectly with metal against metal. They don't need springs. So why do they always put springs between them? Why? To take advantage of this very fact. That's why. That's why the springs are always injected. No one suggests putting a spring between a Newton's cradle, right? Because what will it do? It'll just fuck it up more than it'll fix it. Well, Newton's cradles don't use uneven masses, so it won't fuck it up much, frankly. But it will just suck energy out of the experiment. That's the absolute truth. It'll just make it work less efficiently. It'll bounce fewer times.
They use them because they're very efficient.
So that's the big lie. So again, you just said they're very efficient. His own experiment acknowledges 7% loss. And the actual, like I said, if he didn't cheat, it would have been 10% or more loss. And that's with a mass 100 times heavier than the spring.
A good quality steel spring, it can be anywhere from 90 to like 95% efficient.
So he just says so, right? So his own experiment doesn't show it to be that efficient. But go ahead, lie some more.
In the link I provided.
So the link he provided is the video I just played where he lied about the percentage. That's a half centimeter when it was 0.7 of a centimeter, obviously. So he cheated.
I got just under 93, so middle of the road there.
Middle of what road? And again, the argument is that it gets worse the lighter the object you put on the spring. That's the key argument. It gets worse. It isn't the same amount of loss, no matter what weight you have in the experiment. So that's the key point in the whole fucking argument, is if it was the same amount of inefficiency, it wouldn't matter. But the inefficiency gets worse the lighter the object. That's the argument. Retard.
So that's about right. That's how efficient they are. They're designed that way.
Again, they're designed to be inefficient.
Like I say, a tennis ball is not a spring.
The problem is simple. So that's his argument. It's not elastic. Yeah, it is. That when you move something with a spring, it has to have contact with the spring.
Well, fucking duh. Nothing like stating the bleeding obvious, that is.
All right, and it's a key point, though, right? Is that you have to realize that, how does it lose contact? The spring doesn't stop moving. It doesn't just go, zzz, oh, stop. The spring doesn't do that. It accelerates and then it decelerates. It doesn't stop. Dead. So it's a really important fact, and he just mocked it. Since Hooke's law only applies in terms of oscillations if the spring is actually attached to the mass, so it always has contact. So if you do the experiment like Hooke's law, that is, you take a spring and just suspend an object, and then you pull on it, and then you let it oscillate, it'll oscillate 100 times, maybe more, because it doesn't lose the energy, because it's not throwing something. It's not trying to throw it. So it has to accelerate and decelerate the mass itself, so all the energy stays in the spring. So that shows the huge difference between launching objects and an oscillator. The oscillator will keep the energy. The throwing thing won't keep it. It won't conserve it without losses. As soon as you have a spring mass system where contact is lost, then there's...
Well, if you're launching something, at some point contact is going to be lost, isn't it? Usually.
Yes, this is the key fact. Yes, that's the problem. It won't be... The contact won't be lost when the spring's not moving. The contact will be lost while the spring is still moving. Duh.
When the spring extends back to its original length.
So again, that's not when the object leaves. So again, it's just so obvious that clearly the object doesn't leave when the spring is back to its neutral position. The object leaves when the spring is still going that way. This problem where, let's say this is a light mass, should make it smaller. Well, it doesn't matter. You get it. We're just there. This one's more dense. There. Okay. When you're shooting a light mass, let's say the mass was going to go 50 miles an hour. The spring.
You know what spring you're using there?
As it's expanding, is still going 49 when the mass leaves at 50. So when the mass is leaving, the spring still has a lot of velocity that it's not using because there's no mass to push. So this is. But
again, this is just shit that you say.
Okay, so that's the best thing to do. This is just shit you're saying. Yes, the spring is still going 49 miles an hour. It's going a significantly fast velocity, meaning it still has a whole bunch of energy in it, and it's not going to be able to give it to the object, quite obviously. God, yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous for me to have to play this crap. This is a counter-argument? No. It's verifying the fact that the physics is shit. This is the best they can produce as a counter-argument to my argument? This is the best they can do?
You haven't tested it, have you?
Essentially what the tennis ball is doing when it flies off and it's lost contact with the surface and now oscillates, the spring is going to do the same thing. And the catch is that when you're pushing a heavy mass, say you're only going 10 miles an hour, that's how fast the spring's going. It's only going 10. So there's going to be a lot less energy stuck in.
But in each case, the spring stored an amount of energy. It extended back through that distance with that force into that.
It didn't extend back. It's still going forward when the object leaves, right? So he's not even getting the essential point. It's still going forward. So in one case, it's going 50 miles an hour forward. In the other, well, might as well respond to this crap by the crappy people. Another one of the KE truthers. Okay. And just absolute shit. Okay, so he lies about Newton's second law. No, we know what Newton's second law is, okay? Twice the motion, twice the force, twice the motion, 3 times the force, 3 times the motion. That's his second law. You're the liars. Okay, he lies about Newton's definition of momentum. It's quantity of motion. It's mv. It's not a complicated formula. He never, ever stated mv squared. He never wrote it, never implied it, never stated it. You're the liars. Okay. All right, if the spring is 1/20th of the mass of the object launched, it only ends up keeping 1/20th of the energy. It's not 30%. Well, again, the argument isn't about the mass of the spring. The argument's about how much tension is in the spring. I could have a heavy spring and put 9 pounds on it, and it has 9 pounds of force in it. I can have a very light spring and put 9 pounds on it, and it has 9 pounds of tension in it. It's the tension you're getting out of the spring. It doesn't have anything to do with the mass of the spring. So it's just a bullshit argument. You lying sack of shit. All right, he has been discussed to death. Fuck you. You haven't done shit. You haven't produced any evidence. There's no evidence of 25 times the fuel to go fucking 5 times as fast. You lying sack of shit. Fuck off. Waste of time that shit is. It's disgusting. These people are just such liars. So, I mean, to argue that this doesn't happen when it's obvious it happens. I'm right in the point explaining how obvious it is. You're going to have one circumstance where the spring is moving 50 miles an hour when it loses contact. And the next circumstance is going to be 10 miles an hour. You know, when the spring's only going 10 miles an hour, it can't oscillate very much. You know, when it's going 50 miles an hour, it's going to oscillate a hell of a lot. So you know it has more energy stuck in it. I mean, it's just a fucking duh subject. And for this asshole to claim it doesn't happen is just complete bullshit. It's an absolute fact that it goes from 99% inefficient to maybe 1% inefficient, and it's all about mass. The heavier the mass, the more energy I'll get out of the spring. The lighter the mass, the less energy I'll get out of the spring. Absolute fucking fact. Denied by these truthers. K.E. truthers. In the case, it's only going 10 miles an hour forward. Just as an absolute fact, for it to just be going 10 miles an hour, it can't have much energy left in it. If it's going 50, it has to still have an awful lot of energy still in it. I mean, that's just a duh statement. I mean, how could somebody argue with that? That obviously the spring, where the spring is still going 50 miles an hour, 49 miles an hour, has a lot more energy in it than a spring that's only going 10. Same spring.
Mass, so it delivered the same amount of energy to each mass, regardless of...
So regardless, he just said regardless. It's the same amount of energy. Even though it's a known fact that the spring going 49 miles an hour is going to wobble a lot. And the spring going 10 is going to wobble very little. Those would be absolute observable facts. And he's just denying those absolute observable facts. The faster the velocity, the more the spring's going to wobble when the experiment's over. The slower the velocity, the less it's going to be wobbling when the experiment's over. Those are the absolute facts. And again, this is the third video that I'm required to debunk as their great scientific statement. This is the best they can produce as a counter fucking argument, is this drivel from this fucking lunatic.
How fast it was going.
The spring, because the velocity of the spring is much lower, it'll be doing a lot less oscillating, and it would have put...
And again, why will it be doing a lot less oscillating? Have you tested it?
We can see it, so there's no doubt about it. What do I really, again, could we ask a 10-year-old if they need to see that? Something going 50 miles an hour is going to oscillate more than something going 10 miles an hour? Yeah, I think a 10-year-old can figure out that's going to be true. I mean, it's a ridiculous statement that they need proof of that. It's axiomatic. It's proven axiomatically.
Have you shown this to be true?
Much more energy into the object. So the simple truth is springs have a... And again, every time he says the word show me, I'm saying, well, isn't it your physics that should show me? Shouldn't you be showing me something else to be true? You're making the argument something else is true. Well, go ahead, show me. You've had 350 years to show me any of this physics that you claim to be true. How come you can't show me 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast? It happens every day for 350 years, and you can't show me a single example? Huge bias in the sense that they'll always put more energy, okay, in heavy things.
Right, so they've got a huge bias. What's that?
Huge bias doesn't matter. What does that have to do with the experiment? So there's a huge bias. Who cares? I mean, amazing, right? I mean, you can't get any more glib than this, right? I mean, could you get more unscientific than to say, okay, you win. Yeah, there's a huge bias. So what? Huge biases don't matter. Oh, amazing. I mean, that was priceless, fucking priceless bullshit.
That's a pretty ambiguous statement there.
How's an ambiguous statement? How's it ambiguous? I mean, it should be more direct as a statement. You're losing more energy the lighter the thing is you're pushing. If you're doing an experiment to measure energy, it creates a huge bias in your experiment. If one experiment, a lot of energy is wasted, in the other experiment, a very small amount of the energy is wasted. That's a huge bias in your experimental results. Duh.
So no numbers, no evidence, just you say so, so therefore it's so.
Okay, so it's not I say so. This is mechanics say there's no way around it. I'm making the argument. Can you produce a way around that simple argument? The 50-mile-an-hour spring has to have more energy in it than the 10-mile-an-hour spring. That's the same spring. It's going, 1/4 the speed. 1/5 the speed. And this is the best you can do as a counter argument. Oh, there's a little yellow bus. I wonder what that's for. It's a real little one. It is nice, that just happens to be a little yellow bus going by exactly when I'm having a conversation with one of the writers.
Doesn't work like that, does it?
So whatever. So he's just denying the obvious consequence, the undeniable fact that yes, any idiot could understand a spring going 50 miles an hour has more energy in it than a spring going 10 miles an hour. Any idiot could figure this out. And less energy into light things. So the simple argument is that physics does lots of spring experiments, and none of the...
Yeah, they use them because they're very useful.
Okay, they're very useful at deceiving people. That's the whole argument. All you're using them for is deceive people, to cheat the experiment, to create this very phenomenon of creating fake evidence for something because you didn't account for a real variable. And that's what you're doing. Just like this spar. You're contriving results. You're producing results. You're not doing science experiments. You're just propagandizing and cheating the audience. Fact.
Very efficient.
Physicists talk about... So what's all this crap he's got to put on the screen? What moron does this? Why? How is this an aid to your argument? You fucking lunatic. The fact that springs have a substantial bias against light things. Where
again, a substantial bias. What's that? Give us some numbers.
Yeah. So what's that? I gave you the numbers. The bias is actually 99% if I use a very, very light, something 1,000 times lighter than the spring. I will end up with 99% of the energy lost. The spring will be able to convert nothing into the object because the spring can't go nearly fast enough to push it at the necessary speed for it to convey the linear motion. It can't produce the 1,000 miles an hour necessary. So yes, it's 99% at the worst case, and it might be 6% at the best case.
Give us some evidence. Give us some experiments to show what you're saying. Again.
No, you give us an experiment to show what you're saying. This is just such bullshit. But again, your experiments prove the point. I'm just saying, it's obvious, okay? If I show his experiment, I show the spring flying up and down the air after the experiment, right? The spring is actually literally flying up and down. How could anybody argue that, oh yeah, all the energy got into the object, and the spring moving up and down doesn't have anything to do with the experiment? Obviously, that energy isn't energy in the object. It's obviously where the spring failed to put the energy in the object. Absolute fact.
And you're just making shit up.
They are going to give disproportional amounts of energy to the lighter the thing you put in front of one. So the heavier the object...
But when these experiments are done, that doesn't happen. That's not what's observed.
Yes, it's exactly what's observed. And I can prove it over and over again. Every time they do a comparison experiment with light objects on a spring and then heavy objects on a spring, it happens every single fucking time. Every single fucking time, there's a different amount of total momentum produced by the experiments.
So again, you're just talking crap.
The more... No, I'm talking science, and you're talking religion. Energy you'll get out of the spring. So the same spring compression will, for example, create, let's say, for a heavy object, it would be 100 momentums. For a very light object, it might be 10. So, there...
Again, you have no fucking clue what you're talking about here, do you?
So anyway, yes. So it's exactly the argument. Again, the lighter the object, obviously the spring can't produce the velocity necessary to conserve the momentum. It can't produce a high enough velocity. So obviously it can't give the light object the necessary linear motion because the spring can't go any speed. It has a huge speed limit problem. Really bad for doing clinical experiments to calculate or find the how much energy you transferred or to make carrot.
The energy is in the spring. It's stored in the spring. Doesn't matter what mass you put in front of it, you get the same amount of energy.
Okay, so there's the statement, right? So did he demonstrate that logically anywhere here? So he's just, again, he's just denying the absolute product of the logic here, where the 50-mile-an-hour spring has to have more energy stuck in it than a 10-mile-an-hour. A spring moving 10 miles an hour has to have less force left in it than one moving 50 miles an hour. It's just ridiculous to argue otherwise. It's absolutely ridiculous to argue otherwise. And he just did. And that's what I'm supposed to debunk. His putrid, nonsensical statement that he's declared it to be symmetrical. It's always the same amount of energy that gets into the object. It's obviously not the same amount of energy that gets into the object. So again, it's just obvious. Comparisons between two different things, like an 8-pound bowling ball and a 16-pound bowling ball, or some other kind of experiment. You want to test them for how much energy they can produce. Well, you can't launch them with spring.
But we know how much energy it's going to produce because that's the amount of energy stored in the spring. If you can...
Oh, so he just keeps denying the actual subject. His own experiment proved that he lost 7%. So what the hell is he talking about? That he's not going to get it all back. And the simple argument is 7% is pretty good, but most cases it's going to be a lot less than 7%. I mean, a lot more than 7% is going to be lost the lighter the object you put in front of it. Absolute fact.
Press it to the same amount. That's all you've got. You can't get any more or less.
So he just says you can't waste any more or less. It always wastes exactly the same. So no matter what weight you put on the spring, you lose exactly the same amount of energy. That's exactly my point, that no, that isn't true, and you've proved nothing.
Free energy.
So obviously it's not free energy. My argument is you've taken it out of the linear motion. You don't get the linear motion back because you... All right, so we have some more of just waste comments. So this guy says, why are you supporting a liar? So I'm not going to be called a liar on my own board here, okay? It's just not true. I didn't lie about anything. You're a fucking liar. All right. It's actually bewildering. He's lying about Newton. So I'm not lying about Newton's second law. So it's just lies. So now these are all just sock accounts? So he's making the same arguments I just debunked. I mean, what the fuck is your agenda, jackass? What do you think? I'm going to just let you lie? I've already responded to your lies. Your lies are in the record. Everybody saw your lies. I've responded to your lies. All right. Game over. There's no more game. So why are you wasting time? Wasting your perfectly good, fake sock accounts? Why waste them? Being redundant. You fucking asshole. Anyway. God, it's just amazing. I mean, they really can't just make a physics argument. They can't just make a physics argument. Wasted the energy wobbling the spring. That's the argument. There's no free energy involved in what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that any wobble in the spring is energy you didn't get into the object, quite obviously. You didn't use it efficiently. The same energy won't get into both balls. The heavier one will get more of the momentum than the light one will, and so if you have the assumption...
And again, you're making this assumption that there's momentum stored in springs. Again, damn it.
So he's laughing, like, how could that be possible? How could it be MV? I mean, did you prove that by turning a scale sideways and then moving something in and seeing at what speed it measures its weight? And, well, that sort of proves that gravity's just creating momentum, doesn't it? Yeah, it does prove that. Assholes.
Demonstrate it. Show it to be true.
I have.
And that the spring is going to give the same amount of energy, the assumption is wrong. And it will...
But the evidence says otherwise.
Okay, so there's no evidence saying otherwise. His own experiment proved the 7%. Now I'm just arguing that that was a lie because it was really 11 or 12%, which is a big number, frankly. And the point is that the lighter the object, the higher that percentage goes. Absolute fact.
It's not an assumption. You're making an assumption.
No, you're a lying sack of smelly, dirty, rotten, putrid human garbage.
And you're showing no evidence to support it.
The evidence is in your own experiments. Like I said, some of his experiments are ridiculous. The spring the weight comes down. The springs, he has 3 or 4 springs stacked on top of each other. All of them are flying back up in the air. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I conserved the linear momentum. No, you didn't conserve shit, obviously. I mean, a ridiculous statement in light of his own experiments. And then you could use the Brozo one, after the collision, the spring is doing this. Yeah, I mean, obviously, where did all that wobble come from? Oh, yeah, that came from the compression of the spring. That's the only place it could come from. It's obviously degrading the performance of the spring because it didn't produce linear motion. It produced a spring wobbling.
And it will destroy the credibility of the experiment. So the simple argument is first, physicists never talk about it. If they have talked about it, they don't pay any attention to it, because every single time they do an experiment with a spring, they make the assumption that the same energies...
No, again, they don't make the assumption. You can test and measure these things.
Okay, so there's no test, no measurements. You're just a liar. I just can't believe you people defend this as science. This lying asshole sitting there trying to deny the overt evidence that the same spring expanding at 50 miles an hour and one's expanding at 10 miles an hour, that those two springs have the same energy in them. Who could believe that? But a yellow bus imbecile. And that's your go-to guy. He's our go-to physicist. Yeah. I wonder if Valerie Rousseau will chime in, and maybe he could explain to us how it doesn't happen. That it doesn't matter what weight you put on a spring. You'll get exactly the same efficiency. Can we get Valerie to make that argument? Come on, Valerie, put on your best dress and make a video and explain it to us.
You're making an assumption. You're just projecting. That's all. Because you've got fucking nothing. You know nothing.
Going into the object when it's not.
It's a decisive argument made well, and again, this is the best they can do, is snow on it or something.
All right. So,
I mean, if you're going to bother, you might as well make it piss or something. I mean, what the fuck is this shit?
my challenge to physicists is explain where this isn't a problem for doing spring experiment.
It isn't a problem. You want it to be a problem.
Okay, so you can't get a simpler statement. He's just denying the whole effect. He's claiming it doesn't happen, when it's theoretically impossible to support that position. There's no theory to support that position. It's an absolute fact that if I put a dust particle on the spring, the dust particle will not fly off at 22,000 miles an hour. It's just an absolute fact that I can't get the linear motion into the dust particle because the spring can't move that fast.
To fit your bullshit fucking theory.
Or explain how it isn't a fact. So either explain how it
isn't a fact.
Okay, so that's their counter argument. It's not a fact. I'm just saying it's not a fact. Yeah, you perfectly explained it. You illustrated it quite well. You even showed the tennis ball bouncing. But I'm just going to say it's not a fact. There, we're done.
It's not a problem, or explain how it's not a fact.
It's not a problem because, like I say, you can do the experiments and it's...
Okay, so he says it's not a fact and it's not a problem, when it's obviously a fact and it is a problem.
It's not a big issue. Again, you know, yes, they're not going to transfer 100%. That is in an idealised case. You know, a good quality spring, you're looking between, say, 90 to 95% efficient when launching with them.
Right, any size object. So any mass, doesn't matter, it's still 100% efficient, 95% efficient. Doesn't matter how much the mass weighs. I mean, it's saying it's a theoretically impossible to defend position. There's no theory to defend that position. Because obviously, the spring has a maximum velocity and it can't go any faster than that maximum velocity.
So yes, there's going to be some loss. There's friction. There's air resistance.
I can't put a mass on a spring and make the spring move faster than its maximum speed, right? I mean, with nothing on it. So if I compress a spring and release it with nothing, it has a maximum velocity. You can understand that. Obviously, when I put a mass on, I'm going to slow it down. I can't make it go faster. So the maximum speed is the maximum heaviness you could put an object on theoretically. And the argument is, even if you did find that right object for the speed of the spring, the still fact remains is that now you're going to be moving something 100 miles an hour and your spring's still going to be going 99 miles an hour. So you're still going to lose a lot more energy. So he's just denying what can't be denied reasonably. This is a completely unreasonable response to my argument. There's no reasoning here. There's no logic. This is lawyer shenanigans, if you want to call it something. It's just nonsense. And it's so overt in the sense he's just denying the facts. He's just pretending the facts don't exist when the facts are as obvious as watching his own springs oscillating.
You know, it's not ideal. You're not going to get 100%, but you're claiming...
So he keeps ignoring the subject. You're going to get a different amount depending on the weight of the object.
Well, what are you claiming? Substantial loss. What's that? Give us a number. Pin
99% for light things.
yourself down so we can test it and prove you wrong. But you don't do that, do you?
No, you haven't tested anything. You won't test this because as soon as you test it, there's no way to avoid it. It's an undeniable fact. The spring is less efficient the lighter the object you're pushing. Undeniable fact.
You just come out with vague, ambiguous statements of, oh, well, they're just not very good. Well,
liar, liar, liar.
We could all say that.
Thank you. And that'll be it for this video.
So yeah, basically just a load of crap. The thing is, if you're so bothered about launching with springs, we could drop masses onto springs, because by your own admission...
What the fuck, yeah. How does that fix anything? Oh, that's right, it doesn't fix anything. Especially the way they drop things. So, okay, theoretically, you could do the compression of the spring, but obviously you have to have enough spring to be able to do these fine measurements. You know, and because it's exactly the same principle as before, in the sense the amount the spring compresses, all right, is proportional by Hooke's law. But you can't violate Hooke's law. That is, you can't bang into it harder than the spring can tolerate. So you have to be within the tolerances of the spring. I mean, it's just an unfortunate fact that this scale can only measure 1 pound. It can't do any more than that. You know, so it's just limited. I can't put 2 pounds on here. It won't work. So you always have to be within the limits.
Springs collect energy really well, and yes, they probably are a little bit more efficient. You're probably looking more to say 95 to 98% efficient when doing that. So wouldn't it be interesting if somebody did that and maybe showed it to you?
Yeah, so they're interested. They're doing it, okay, is in this way where they don't attach the springs. They have more than one spring stacked on top of each other. They do it in all kinds of silly, crappy, shitty ways. And then they have this steel rod that they're letting everything slide down, and you can hear it. You can hear the friction. So you don't even know how much the objects are actually free falling or how much they're being restricted by the friction of sliding against this steel rod. So it's just a bullshit. But look, we got all we needed from him, right? He basically denied the existence of the phenomenon, and then even if he conceded it existed, somehow it's not critical to experiments that you have this huge difference in the amount of energy the spring releases, when obviously it's going to be critical to your experimental results. So it's a pretty decisive demonstration of just how incredible their arguments were. So this guy linked to these 2 shitty videos, right? And you know, this earlier Lyme. So we know he has no interest in a fair argument or a rational argument because he linked to 2 videos that are absolute rubbish. And they're really almost not on the subject in the sense that their own statements are pretty much a conclusive proof that I'm exactly right, that this is a real phenomenon. The more oscillations in this ball, the less energy is going to get converted into the linear motion. The higher the velocity, the more oscillations, the more energy lost. All right. So that should be it. Let's see. I don't think there's anything new here, but while I'm here, might as well check. 4. Okay. Nope. All right. So I'll be back later and such, if necessary. All right. Back. So, I don't even know what the fuck to make out of this stupid comment. There are counter-arguments on Reddit. There are counter-arguments on Reddit. What are you talking about? Why not actually engage with them to test your understanding? What are you talking about? I mean, these videos are my counter-arguments to the crap on Reddit. I can't post on Reddit because they banned me for merely arguing physics. Okay, I didn't trash anybody, didn't dox anybody, didn't harass anybody, and they kicked me off the entire platform merely for making these physics arguments. So why don't you explain to me, moron? Explain to me how I'm supposed to engage with them on Reddit when I'm not allowed to have a Reddit account. I don't know. So what's your point? Yeah, it's a one-way conversation. Well, I don't know how it's one way. I mean, you people really don't think there's such a thing as a video response? I mean, none of you can make a video response? None of you can actually make an argument in some way? Look, even Falwell made a video response. Now, obviously, the response was complete shit because he just ignored the entire argument. But what, it's not possible? This isn't something you can do? I'm not going to get any rational answer from this asshole. But I mean, what's the point? How so? What does this mean? How so? To talk about it somewhere. What is this? Want to talk about it somewhere. What do you... These aren't even complete sentences. Can one of you write a complete sentence? I can engage. In what way can you engage? Can you draw a picture and put sound on it? I mean, you know how to make an audio file? You can put that on YouTube, you know. You just make an audio file, put it in a converter, turn it into an MP4. Not hard to do. Upload it as a video. Why don't you do that? With whatever your great argument is. I'm just saying, obviously, you're not going to have a great argument. You're not going to show me evidence that takes 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. So until I see that piece of evidence, all of this conversation is kind of a waste of time. Because you've had 350 years to prove something is supposed to happen every fucking day. Show me a turbine spinning twice as fast, producing 4 times the electricity. Show me a turbine spinning 3 times as fast, producing 9 times the electricity. Show me. You can't show shit. All you can do is arrogantly say, I have to believe in your silly religion. No, I don't. And I won't. Asshole. Let's see, what is this? If you just want only one perspective, what the fuck does that even mean? There's a truth. Can you argue the truth or not? Can you defend a statement? Can you make a statement about reality and then defend it? Do you believe it takes 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast? Do you really think that's true, fuckhead? So he's retracting his own comments now. Just go away. Yeah, we'll time him out. Obviously, you don't know how to participate properly. You're just going to waste my goddamn time. Jesus. Stupid shits. Well, the fact that he doesn't come across as a credible source, well, how is he any kind of source? He didn't make an argument. He didn't post to any kind of reasons there's evidence somewhere. He just said that somehow we're supposed to make the argument some other way than this way, that this somehow isn't a proper counter-argument. Well, how else can you make the counter-argument under the circumstances? There's no other way to make it. Well, good. I'll go get the new comments. I'm just saying, do you think the comments are going to be any better than the 4 that already exist? Is there anything in those new comments that has anything to do with the subject? There won't be. I guarantee you. It's an undeniable fact, okay? It's just undeniable to say that a spring that's oscillating very quickly or a spring that's oscillating very slowly, which one has more energy in it? You'd have to be a fucking lunatic, okay, to get that question wrong. If I showed that on an IQ test to kids, I think they could figure out which one has more energy in it. All right. He's just fucking shows up to talk shit. Well, I don't know who that is, but whatever. All right. So anyway, I don't know, frankly, I don't follow who's the who's of the morons on the internet. So, whatever. All right. So I think there's still one more video here to play. So I will play it. Yeah, I guess I'll do a couple of comments. So, some asshole, tree bark something or other. Anyway, existence has continuity. Well, yeah, that's just baby talk, whatever that could possibly mean. I'm arguing that it has, that there's physical laws and they have to be obeyed, and you people aren't obeying them, frankly. Acceleration and deceleration, well, duh. I mean, it's change in velocity. You can either change it by reducing the velocity or increasing the velocity, but that's all you can do is increase the velocity or decrease the velocity. Duh. All right, if you are free fall, you are being accelerated. Duh. Okay, you're at 1 unit per unit of time. So in 1 unit of time, 1 second, you get 9.8 of acceleration, and that's the real relationship. It's in units of time, not units of distance. And then he points to squared relationship over time of your position through space. Yes, well, that's because of the accrued velocity. So again, these are you're not paying any attention to my argument, so why should I pay any attention to yours, right? I mean, you're posting this comment to a video that explains, okay, the time-dependent nature, that it's only twice the velocity, you're only in the gravity twice the time. It'd be silly to think there's 4 times of something. So the fact you went 4 times the distance just has to do with your accruing velocity. And so you're getting motion that you don't have to get over and over again. You don't need a new acceleration to have the acceleration you got from the first second is permanent. The second second, it's permanent. The third second, it's permanent. But it's only 9.8 in each one of those seconds. All right, if you impact or decelerate almost instantaneously, so this is more baby talk, there's no such thing anywhere, that does more work than being decelerated over some amount of time. Okay, so this is a direct contradiction of Isaac Newton saying that it's ever proportional and that it doesn't matter whether it happens over a little period of time or a quick period of time. So those are exactly what Newton said. So again, you're arguing with Isaac Newton. Okay, well, prove Newton wrong. Show me. You won't show anything. I mean, this is just such a waste of time. You pay no attention to the arguments, okay? They're all on this Reddit page. Do I have to give you a link again? All right. Well, I mean, this is just such bullshit. You're doing this crap, this nonsense bullshit. You're just talking. I have an email address. It's on every fucking video I post. If you want to have a conversation, you email me, send me your information so I can show you how to get into a room. And now you're doing it again. You're retracting your comments. I mean, you're just spamming this board, you fucking piece of shit. I mean, goddamn, how many troll sock accounts do you have? So that's all they have. The only tactic they have are cheats. They have to cheat every single system. Every system, they have to cheat the system. You're not supposed to have all these sock accounts, asshole. That's not how the game is supposed to work. They'd use a bunch of sock accounts to upvote your shit and downvote other people's shit. You're just cheaters. Fucking cheaters. Jeez, you're just so obvious. So they just keep proving my goddamn point. None of these people can show any integrity as human beings. They have no integrity in these arguments. They're so fucking dishonest. Disgusting. Isolate the argument and make a counter argument to these isolated arguments. I've already countered your argument. You won't pay any attention to the counter arguments. That's what the whole video was about, was the counter arguments. Where in this tripe are you countering anything I said? You're just pretending I didn't say anything. I mean, you're wasting my time. Illustrated by pendulums. Yeah, we already know. Yes, it's 4 times the height gets you twice the velocity because it only takes you twice the time to fall 4 times the distance. It's 9.8 meters per second per 1 second. That's the actual formula. Nothing else is true. That's the true formula. It's not per meter. It's not per unit of distance. All right, and their drop height, it has squared relationship to the velocity. Yeah, only when you don't push the pendulum. If you push it, all of a sudden all that goes right out the window. All that distance shit doesn't mean anything. Those are the arguments made, and you're just ignoring them. The gun shooting down. The argument. You're just ignoring the arguments. Okay, they have a let's see, a relationship to the velocity they have at the bottom. Momentum isn't the full story, says you, and you don't have any evidence there's any other story at all. You can't show 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. That's the consequence of your wacky theory. So show me the evidence of that shit. Don't do this waste of time. Show evidence or shut up. Because we don't live in the existence of discrete snapshots of vectored motion. Yeah, well, yes, we do, is the argument. So you don't have any evidence that we can't take snapshots. Okay, and it's very revealing, frankly. But of continuous quantities of motion, says you. Momentum, kinetic energy, gravity. You're just throwing words to a salad here. Kinetic energy is nothing. Gravity is a real thing, obviously. Electromagnetism is a real thing. Strong force is nonsense. Easily debunked. You want to get two protons close together, you just stick an electron between them. Problem solved. Game over. Explain how sticking an electron between two protons doesn't get two protons really close together. Go ahead and explain it. How that theory doesn't work. You're not going to do any of that. If it was all momentum, that's fine to speculate on what energy fundamentally is. No, the fact is that works. And it didn't not work. There wasn't anything broken. Momentum worked. Leibniz wanted to believe in a religious world, a spiritual world. So he changed the rules because he didn't like atheist physics. But I think you I think you would observe a fundamental unit of snapshottedness of time or motion, which we don't. Well, of course we do. So I don't even know what you're fucking talking about, moron. We've got faster and faster high-speed cameras. We're seeing that motion is quite logical. There's no spooky parts. Nothing spooky happens. There's certainly no evidence of any scalering. There's no scalering showing up. It's a continuous Oh, fuck you and this baby talk. And we have predictive utility in that. Well, I'm just saying that obviously you don't predict anything right. The ballistic pendulum, you're predicting that you're conserving. You didn't conserve anything, and you certainly didn't measure anything called temperature. So you're claiming there's a whole bunch of heat somewhere that was created by momentum that doesn't exist. Because you have all your linear momentum. You've conserved all the momentum. How'd you make heat with no momentum? So you haven't defeated any of these arguments. You're just a waste of my fucking goddamn time. Through observation and modeling functions on them. So just a lie. I'm sorry, you don't have any of this evidence. You can't show me 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. That means your game is over. Because you've had 300 years to produce the evidence and you can't produce a shred of it. So you're done with your silly theory. It's a fucking Jesus walked on water theory. You have no fucking video, so I'm not believing it. Jackass. Alright, so you have this long conversation with this asshole, and he just keeps ignoring all the arguments, just wasting my time. So I say the fundamental argument is gravity is not a distant dependent force, and is in fact time dependent. Saying how much energy it takes to lift something is pointless if you don't talk about how fast you're lifting it. Duh. So again, rocket ships gain huge efficiency by getting to space quickly. If they took their time like an airplane and they just flew around in circles and slowly went higher and higher, they would use 1,000,000 times more energy. Because it's much more efficient to defeat gravity. You have to defeat it with using time. Time is how you defeat it. You don't defeat it by distance. You defeat it with time. Anyway. And then this moron just keeps spouting this crap. Okay, the fundamental argument is gravity is not distant dependent. That's just your funny way of saying that something falls twice the time, it gains twice the velocity. Nobody disagrees. Well, the fact is you're disagreeing in the sense something else is happening. That somehow you're getting more than 9.8 meters of acceleration per unit of time. And that's all you're getting. You're just getting 4.9. In 1 second, you get 4.9 units of distance, and you get the added velocity of 9.8. That's what happens every second. That's all you get. That's all that changes. You're claiming that somehow I got 4 units of something when there's only 2 units of something you got. That's the bullshit. Yours is magic. It's spooky fucking energy. You're saying you gained a bunch of spooky energy from a non-existent force that gave it to you in a distance that isn't in your own formula. Saying how much energy it takes to lift something is pointless, okay? It says just exclude all energy that goes somewhere else than actually lifting the object, like heat. Then time doesn't matter anymore. So again, it's just absolute nonsense. So it's just provable fact. I mean, I can hold something in gravity and I'm going to do a lot of work. The slower I move something from one place to another, the more work I'm going to do because there's a constant time-dependent force that's pushing against me, and I have to compensate for that constant time-dependent force. It's not about the goddamn distance. It's about how long I'm sitting in the time-dependent force. Well, I'm stopping the free fall. I'm preventing it by creating a friction, a contact. I'm absorbing the energy of the gravity. I have to do the work. It's just ludicrous to say I'm not doing any work when I'm holding this up against gravity. It's a baby, an idiotic concept. And again, I've debunked this 4 million times. As for saying Newton didn't know what force was, well, that's what you're arguing. He didn't say that. Exactly. What he said was what I've repeated over and over again. It's ever proportional to momentum. And then he went so far as to say twice the motion, twice the force, twice the motion, three times the force, three times the motion, just to make it perfectly clear. He didn't believe in any squared function. He wasn't a believer in your scalar, fruity, poofer energy. Then, if Newton believed velocity quadratically increases with some kind of meaningful action, why would he have written a third law completely inconsistent with that being possible? So again, why would he write the third law when kinetic energy can't be conserved under the third law whenever you switch the energy from heavy mass to a light mass or light mass to a heavy mass? And then he says, your interpretation of the third law is completely nonsensical. Fuck you. Okay. It's not about energy, it's about force. There's no difference. So that's clear what Newton was saying. I think we're done having a conversation, so just fuck off. You're not dealing with a single one of my fucking arguments. I have to repeat them over and over again. This is just a waste of my goddamn time. So yeah, go waste somebody else's time, fuckhead. Alright. I mean, there's just no point in arguing with these people. They just keep saying their scalar energy is somehow visible. You know the 4 times the distance is being created because of the crude velocity. So we know that happens because you can look at the diagram. In the first second, you travel this much. In the second second, you travel this much. In the third second, you travel 5 times that much. And why? Because you're accruing velocity that's not being destroyed. So you gain the velocity in the first second that takes you through the second second. And all you get added is the 4.9. There's only 4.9 in the first second. There's only 4.9 added in the second second. There's only 4.9 added in the third second. Those are absolute facts. You know, and again, you're just wasting my goddamn fucking time. You're not on the subject. You're not refuting anything I'm saying. You're just regurgitating the same crappy puke every fucking goddamn paragraph. Same stupid arguments that I've debunked over and over again. So fuck you. Audio. Yeah, so enough of that. There should be some new posts, I guess people are saying, so let me go find that and we'll see if there's anything worth reading. Yeah, 3 new ones. Okay, so I should be able to find this and put it on the screen, and then I just have to move it over here, and I probably have to resize it a little bit, and a little bit more maybe. Okay, and such. All right, and then I should have to just do this little maneuver, and that should be it. Okay, so I guess we'll just, I don't know whether, yeah, let's go to the newest first, see what it does. So that's 1 hour ago. Let's see, and then that's 13 hours ago, and let's see, 9 minutes ago, 1 hour ago. So these are almost useless, obviously, responses, you know, one sentence, because they supposedly outrun the object. So obviously that was something I read earlier, how no, the spring isn't outrunning the object, exactly the opposite. Let's see, you couldn't type this yourself. Not labeling AI comments as incredibly lame. Alright, well, whatever. I mean, I've made the accusation. It sounds a little AI-y, you know, but why? Who cares? I'm just saying, obviously it sounds like it. It doesn't mean there isn't some value to the entire content, but obviously it is kind of weak because of its, you know, there isn't anything, there's just rhetoric. There isn't any substance. And obviously no links to anything called the experiment. Alright, so he responds to that accusation. It's wild how this always gets thrown out as a got you. No, it's just thrown out as an argument that, you know, you're wasting my time. I don't need to read a bunch of, it's just like spreading peanut butter on your pizza. I don't need those kind of silly statements over and over again. They're a waste of my neurons. I don't appreciate being preached to by people who have to keep using completely abstractly weird and archaic analogies. It's not interesting. Okay. As if you don't type every word by hand somehow erases the point being made. Well, it erases the cogentness, okay, and the sincerity of anything you're typing. Okay, people use calculators, spell checkers, Grammarly, citation managers, and code linters every day without announcing it like it's a confession. Well, what shows integrity? Announcing it. I mean, every AI thing I've posted as AI. I haven't pretended oh, I wrote it or I did it. Why would people want to deceive people? And that's all you're doing. You're saying deception is good. I'm saying it'd be much better if we're all on film, so to speak. I like cameras being everywhere. I like us all being accountable for our behavior. Accountability is a really cool thing. Covert, conspiratorial shenanigans isn't a cool thing. Okay. Citation managers, coli. Okay. Reddit isn't a high-stakes authenticity tribunal. Well, it says it's the heart of the internet. That's how they describe themselves. It's the heart of the internet. And the fact is, it's a platform for which everybody should have free access. And they've denied me my rightful access. And that's a fact. And they have denied it because they don't like that I'm making physics arguments that make their theories look ridiculous. And that's the only reason why I've been denied access, is because they have to control what people say about science. They own it, and nobody can tell anybody anything different than what they want to preach. So they're no better than the Inquisitioners. How is it any different? They're saying people can't freely speak this stuff without being threatened with deplatforming and worse. Harassment, doxing, all kinds of bullshit. Okay. It's a discussion forum. Well, obviously it's not. It's just a bastion of personal attack. It's a troll's wet dream. It isn't anything to do anything called have an honest argument. And part of an honest argument is saying, okay, I allowed an AI to write my rhetorical comment for me. All right. What matters is whether the argument holds up. And yeah, the point is your arguments are a waste of my time because it's 90% nothing. It's a tiny percentage where you actually make a declaration, and then you contradict yourself in your own statements. One minute you agree with a premise, and the next minute you deny that premise. So the incoherency, the raw, ugly errors in the rhetoric is even obvious, indicating, well, yeah, it can't be written by a person because a person would see those obvious contradictions. AI makes silly mistakes, and the silly mistakes are in your text. Not whether someone typed it with their own fingers, dictated it, or drafted it with help. And again, the argument is what help are you asking it to do besides waste my time? That's all. It's just, there's a bunch of wasted verbiage here. You're not on the subject anywhere. Okay. And honestly, the obsession with AI labeling in these threads is extra funny given the context. What context is that? Draft science spends years misrepresenting basic mechanics. So in what way have I misrepresented anything? I've played hundreds of full-length physics lectures. I mean, it's just such a lie. I don't know how you can get away with this grotesque lie that I have misrepresented anything. Please quote my misrepresentations. Put them in a list of quotes where you're saying I'm misrepresenting something. I mean, you think it's a misrepresenting because I accurately describe what Newton said. All right. You liars. All right, I am back. It's always something. At least some stuff is more trivial than others. Anyway, so where the hell fucking was I? Let's see. Confidently asserting things collapse under the slightest scrutiny. Okay, let's see. Funny, given the context. Draft science spends years misrepresenting basic mechanics. So it's just a lie. I've misrepresented anything. Ignoring measurements. Lie. And confidently asserting things that collapse under the slightest scrutiny. What a fucking lie. What collapses under what scrutiny? Liar. The fact is, you can't produce any fucking credible evidence that it takes 9 times the fuel to move something 3 times as fast, or 25 times the fuel to move something 5 times as fast. Absolute fucking fact. You can't produce anything like a piece of credible evidence in 350 years. Nothing. But that's apparently fine. The real crime is someone writing a coherent paragraph. Well, there's nothing coherent because they're direct contradictions, and I pointed that out in your earlier pile of tripe. That you have direct contradictions in your fucking tripe. Okay. What the hell did I do with the fucking window? Let's see. There. Okay. All right. If the content is correct and the reasoning is solid, who cares? Yeah, it's not. Your comments are a waste of time because of the superfluous verbiage. A bunch of wasted time with a bunch of silly metaphors and nonsense instead of just getting to the fucking subject. The physics doesn't magically change depending on the keyboard used, so it's not about a keyboard, you fucking liar. But anyway, this isn't a big issue to me, but I'm just saying it was obvious that his conversation is fucked up, is the simple term for it, right? Yeah, fucked up. Let's see, edited 51 minutes ago. Oh, I'm not going to read. Well, here's the edit. The video by Michael Fall while testing the spring efficiency by launching the object was done using Falwell's lightest mass. So this is a silly comment. It's obviously a fucking, from a ratchet wrench. It's not a minor piece of mass. And it has nothing to do with the point. Do something twice as light and see what happens. The point is he didn't make any comparison between any mass and another mass of a different mass. He didn't make any mass comparisons. The argument is that as the mass decreases, the problem increases. How could he prove that when he didn't do the experiment, you piece of lying shit? Okay. The other experiment, he taped multiples of the same cylindrical block together. Yes, and put it on a steel rod. So who knows how much friction was inside all of those taped pieces of shit. So anyway, the heavier object launched, the spring efficiently becomes greater. So again, you're lying. Just so fuck you. I don't have to deal with these lies. The experiment, as it was shown, shows him first lying about the measurement. He didn't even do the measurement honestly. And then on top of that, he wasn't even on the subject. So fuck you and this bullshit. All right, I don't have to respond to this. Like I said, I got to waste my life debunking absolute crap? Experimental crap? All right, so fuck this. Fuck that. If that's all you got, then I won't be reading your future comments if you can't do better than that. I mean, I wasted my time playing the 2 shitty videos you linked to. Neither one show the exact thing I'm talking about, which is how much more efficiency the spring loses the lighter the object. It has nothing to do with the subject, doesn't prove the subject at all, and you wasted a fucking, I played whatever it was, 40 minutes of video that was just a waste of my life. All right, so here's some more crap from this asshole. Erler Lime. If a spring is 1/20th of the mass of the object launched, so again, it doesn't matter how heavy the spring is. It's the torque in the spring. I can put a mass on a heavy spring. I can put a mass on a light spring. It doesn't matter how heavy the spring is. That's not going to decide how much the weight weighs. It doesn't decide how much pressure is in the spring. Fuck you. All right, the only ends up keeping 1/20th of the energy because the energy is proportional to the mass. So that's not the argument. So again, just keep lying. Let's analyze the actual objects launched by a spring, not a tennis ball bounce off the floor. So again, it's going to keep lying. So what's the point, right? I don't have to read this. Take a mass of 100 grams and a spring mass of 5 grams. No, we're not doing this. It's not relevant. and it's not an experiment. So show me the experiment. Now take a mass of 200 grams and 5 grams spring. So again, it's not about the weight of the spring. It's about how much force is left in the spring. How much wobbling is it doing, you fucking cunt? Do you understand the concept? It's about how much velocity is still in the spring after the fucking object leaves, you fucking dumb cunt. Don't tell me that it's the same amount of energy when it's going like this or it's going like this. Okay, that can't be possible, you dumb piece of fucking goddamn shit. So you don't think you're wasting my goddamn time? Yeah, you're wasting my goddamn time. All right. So anyway, fuck this. It's a waste of time. I mean, the denial. It's just amazing. They don't have the experiment. That's the truth. No physicist even analyzes this subject. That's the truth. There's no physics conversation. There's no science lecture anywhere where they talk about this phenomenon. All of that is absolute factual truth. And now all they're doing is pretending it's not a real thing when it's obviously a real thing. I mean, do I really have to sit there and put a spring in my hand and move it quickly and show it wobbling really fast and then wobble it slowly and show how it's wobbling a little tiny bit and explain to you that this is a very little wobble is a little bit of energy and a lot of wobble is a lot of energy? I actually have to do that fucking experiment and show that to you? Oh, bullshit I do. Again, a 6-year-old could figure this part out. A 6-year-old wouldn't deny the obvious. If I showed them the 2 springs, one wobbling like this and one wobbling like that, the 6-year-old could pick the right one. If I asked them which one has more energy, they could pick the right one. Oh, just disgusting. Human garbage. It's all there is on this planet. Ugh, disgusting. All right, so we'll see if there's any useless comments. I guess I could put that up here. Should be one of these things. That's not that. That's not it. Weird. It should show up here some. Oh, that's right. I don't have it in a live window. So, yeah, I have to put it in its own little fucking window. Is it worth it? Oh, a bunch of retracted comments. God, what fucking scum. Jesus Christ, these people. All right, well, I'm just going to block Jelly Bucket because, yeah, you're just wasting people's time if you're going to retract comments. So that's just unacceptable. Sorry. I don't care whether you're on my side or against me. Deleting comments is just a waste of everybody's time. So don't come back. I've been keeping up with the Reddit post. Comments are ridiculous to read. Yes. Okay. I've seen your perspective and the perspective of the people who align yourself with. Who do I align myself with? What is this talking about? Okay. He's talking to one of these people that did their retracting, I guess. Obviously, they're... Oh, there's no audio again? No, there's audio. Yeah, I guess that's something else that we're talking about. Yeah, I paused for a while. Anyway, talking shit fallacy. So, okay, I guess that was a response to some gibberish. I'm not on a team and I'm not a dude, asshole. Yes, that's always a problem when people think calling somebody else a dude is showing respect when it's obviously just farting in someone's direction. I don't approve of your tactics and the lies from people you align with, such as Valerie Rousseau. Yes. I mean, he's just, more despicable, but obviously all of these characters, from Brozo to Dispar to Falwell to Gosling, their only agenda, they don't care about any of this physics. They just care about tearing me down. They don't like me. They want to harm me, and that's all they're about. And that's the part that's really disgusting, is that this conversation is being controlled by people who just have no interest in the actual physics. All right, and your lack of integrity. That was a response to Marbles. Well, he was back again. I mean, I guess that somehow you know all his sock accounts, but yeah, I don't know all his sock accounts. They're all in the same group of scum. Well, I'm just saying, but this is, you do run into this. Physicist Michael was polite enough. It got very contentious between us, but, he hung in there. But then why did he just disappear? That's the thing too. You got to just say, why the fuck would somebody just bail out of the conversation and they wouldn't even give an explanation? They wouldn't even say, I just don't want to deal with all this, hostility and noise. Say something. But to say absolutely nothing, it's just so lame. And again, for Valerie Rousseau to say he's going to do the experiment and then he doesn't do it, it's just, what the fuck is that bullshit? It's like Gosling was supposed to do some experiments he never redid. This Spar, did the fake milk carton experiment. That's one I love to illustrate just because it was so obvious how he cheated. So maybe I'll do that. I'll just illustrate what an insane cheat his experiment was. And he didn't retract it. He didn't say anything like, I'm sorry. Yeah, I really deceived people. That was really garbage. No, he didn't. He just pretended, oh, let's just move on. We won't redo it and prove Gary right. Instead, we'll just pretend, okay, that it never happened. So he had two pendulums, swinging. And so we just use long and short. And the idea was he's going to put a tipping argument, object here. And so the idea was in one of the pendulums he has, well, I guess they're the same length, but they have different amounts of energy in them, okay? And what he did was, obviously the one pendulum has a very small length of distance it was arcing, and the other one has a very long distance it's arcing. But he put the carton in exactly the same place. So by the time the one pendulum hit the carton, it had lost 90% of its momentum, was gone. And when the other thing hit the carton, it still had maybe 50% of its momentum. And so it was such an obvious cheat. Obviously you can't compare these two impacts because this one has lost 90% of its energy and this one's only lost 50. It's an insane unfairness. And he left that video up. And he didn't make any comment like, oh yeah, I was wrong. Okay, that setup was bullshit. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry I deceived anybody with an experiment that was bullshit. Nothing. So they have no integrity. Like I said, they don't care about the truth. So anyway, let's see. I guess I'm assuming that it was marbles. They are all the same type of scum to me. Yeah, well, I can't tell one from the other, frankly. So yeah, your guess is as good as mine, I suppose. These Reddit posts have only highlighted how dishonest people can be. Well, what it's also highlighting is that people take no real interest. So, if the post gets 500 views and not one person can say anything like on the subject, you got to wonder. And the simulation post really is a giveaway because I posted a link to a video explaining, the functions of the simulation. And it only has 4 views. I don't know what it is today. Maybe there's a couple more. That was it, 4 views. So for it had a couple of hundred views for the post, and only 4 people gave a shit to go look. So, that's a pretty good piece of evidence that, what the fuck? There's nobody in this conversation. Nobody gives a shit about these subjects. So anyway, these Reddit posts have only highlighted how dishonest people can be, how poor their behavior is. After all these posts, I'd expect people would post credible evidence or even reasonable arguments. Again, there's not even a glimmer of a reasonable counter-argument. It's just this blanket denial in the face of them having no evidence to produce. Again, just simple things like sticking a thermometer in a ballistic pendulum. They haven't figured out that they need to do that. If they're going to claim there's 2,000 joules of energy inside the damn pendulum, shouldn't they stick a thermometer in there and prove it? It's just unfortunate, like I said, that all these science platforms are closed and narrow, and they really won't pay any attention to any of these valid critiques of this dogmatic, magical religio science. It's not science. It's definitely just dogmatic religion. All right. So let's see how far we are in here. 2:48. That is pretty long. Yeah. So maybe I'll cut it there. If somebody has something to say, but no one's going to have anything to say. Look, I want the counter arguments, but they just can't make them. and they can't ever be fair. Like I said, not for Despard to just admit that was a stupid experiment. Yes, I did a dumb experiment. It was dumb. And he won't, and then redo it the right way. And then show how, the experiment proves me wrong. Because if he does it the right way, it's going to prove me right. And that's the part that pisses me off, is they run away. Stephen Bro said he was going to redo the lever launcher. He actually did redo it. That was an absolute fact because he said he did. But he never published it. Why? Why? He redid it. Why didn't he publish it? Oh, that's right, because he couldn't contrive it into a defense of his theory. It proved that the theory wasn't working. And so, that's why we're not going to see the experiment. Ian Gosling did the same thing. When the experiment didn't come out his way, he made a video telling everybody, hey, it's not working, so we got to come up with a way to make it work. So how can I do it different to make it work? Because it's not working. It's coming out his way. It can't possibly, that can't be right. It can't come out his way. That's their actual, that's just showing how little integrity they have in doing any of this experimenting. That it's all for the one purpose. Their intent is to create propaganda that proves me wrong, not science that proves me wrong. All right. I mean, the fact that Brozo kept doing all of those stupid clay experiments after I'd already explained how they don't have any credibility. You can't dent clay with round objects. And then he used round objects. Even Despard did that, right? So after I stated it over and over again, you can't use round objects, he kept using round objects when he could have just used a flat object. Why didn't he do the experiment with the flat object? Oh, that's right, because it won't come out his way. So again, it's just about cheating. That's all they're interested in, is cheating. I mean, even his 9 rubber band fucking experiment was just so obvious the cheat. I mean, you could see the rubber bands weren't stretched the right amount. The board was all crooked. I mean, everything was going all kinds of wrong because there was so much pressure in the 9 rubber bands. It's just so obvious a cheat. Let's see, they are not careful in their experiment. No, they are careful. They're careful to make sure they come out their way. They're careful in manipulating the experiment to break the experiment, to force it to look their way. That's what they're carefully doing, is only showing us when it works their way. Okay. And purposely cheat. When you point this out, they dismiss it. Yes, of course. So I'm just saying that's obviously, I'm just saying you could see the obvious cheat in the Falwell, right? I mean, it was obvious that it was more than half a centimeter, right? So there's no reason for him to say half centimeter, because it was obviously more than a half centimeter. And he couldn't even be honest to that. So anyway. Yeah, so that's probably enough said, really. And such. And so forth and whatnot. Yeah, it's probably late enough. It's a very long video. I mean, it's just, yeah. I have to, be nice if there was some dancing girls now and then, or some girls on a table or something, go-go dancer or something to make it a little more entertaining. But you get what you get. At least there's no snowflakes. Yeah, at least. All right. So anyway, till the next time, and such and so forth and whatnot. And yeah. Likewise, thank you for your participation.